In this story, a nation named Blue Moon is established to protect humans from the dangers of nature. The king of this nation was a wise man who ruled with fairness and kindness. The days of the citizens were peaceful while this king ruled. However, a rebellion started from within, and the king was taken out. War spread through the nation and everything turned into hell and ashes. Many people lost their lives to the sword, and those who wielded weapons dismissed justice. Because of this,
one man in a red mask killed the leader of the rebel forces and ended the war. The citizens named this hero Redman. As it turns out, the school principal reading this story explains that it's been 100 years since this happened. Excitedly, one of the students asks the principal why they're not in Blue Moon but in the slums since the war's over. Another boy standing next to her explains that it's because they're the villains in the story, which surprises her. Eventually, the principal reluctantly explains to them that every one of them are descendants of the rebel forces.
However, he counsels that they don't let this news make them blame themselves, since they're not at fault. When class is dismissed, some of the students decide to go help someone named Mr. Kim since it's lunchtime. Somewhere in a nearby forest, Mr. Kim gathers some fruits, and he's soon approached by the pupils and the principal. With much excitement, the girl from before explains that they're here to help him. He's also happy to see them, so he tells them to come closer. Later they all have lunch, and one of the boys complains that they're eating beans again. The girl next to him gobbles her own portion and tells him to just eat it, but he refuses and tosses it away. When he does that, the girl in front of him refers to him as Hajin and tells him he can't eat what he wants. Her loud voice startles him, so he asks her to be quiet so others don't hear. Soon after, Mr. Kim tells him he should eat the beans too and asks him if he knows why. Immediately, one of the boys answers that it's because the people in the slums are so poor that they die of starvation every day, so they should be thankful that they're getting food from the school. Kim becomes uncomfortable because of how grimly the boy paints it, and further adds that it's because they need to eat everything to grow up healthy. Suddenly, Mr. Kim calls out a boy named Haeok Baxian and warns him to stop eating the food that Hajin threw on the floor. He tells him he'll get sick if he eats dirty food and asks him to spit it out, but Baxian doesn't budge. While they're arguing, the principal gives a hearty laugh. Mr. Kim recognizes that he's an elementary teacher with a peculiar name. Apparently, this is the only school in the slums, and it's more accurate to consider it an orphanage. The only people here are him, the principal, and the 9 kids. Mr. Kim cherishes them all more than his life. He spends most of his time tending to them and doing minor repairs so they live properly. Sometime later, he goes to check on the kids and finds one of them wearing a mask and parading himself as the Red Man, the hero of justice. Nearby, one of the girls accuses the boy of being petty for always playing Redman and never letting her act the part. The boy insists that he has to do it since he's the fastest, so Mr. Kim takes his mask. Mr. Kim tells him that they need to compromise for each other and removes the mask to find out that it's Taishin. Taishin pleads that he gives back the mask because they were playing the hero game, so Mr. Kim reminds him that he had told them not to carelessly use other people's stuff. Eventually, he asks an older boy named Maru if he'll take the kids to play soccer in the playground, and Maru protests that he doesn't want to. Mr. Kim reminds him he's the oldest here, so he has no choice but to oblige. When the kids hear about soccer, they excitedly head out with the ball as kids do. Immediately, Taishin calls out to other kids named Hyung and Nuna and tells them to join them to play soccer. Once the kids are out of the way, Kim decides to return the mask to the owner, but he gazes at it for a while. The sight of the mask makes him uncomfortable, and he remains motionless. Suddenly, the principal startles him from behind by mentioning that he had been looking for the mask. The principal asks if Taishin took the mask this time, and Kim informs him that he did. Eventually, Kim says that he wonders what the boy likes about this sinister mask every time. Confused, the principal asks what he means since it's just a normal mask. Worried that he's hit a nerve, Kim explains that he doesn't mean to insult him since he knows the principal cherishes the mask. However, the principal tells him it's okay, and asks what made him feel that way. Kim admits that he's not sure but explains that touching the mask made his heart race faster and got his body hotter as if he's an angry person. The principal finds that funny since Kim has never been disturbed by anything so much that it makes him angry. Kim also finds it funny, so he quickly goes ahead to get the laundry because it looks like it will rain soon. While they're both taking down the clothes, Kim notes that the weather has gotten cloudy and points out that it was much better that morning. Suddenly, the principal mentions that a strange rumor has been going around these days. When Kim asks about it, the principal mentions that they say people in suits are kidnapping kids in the neighborhood these days. Although it doesn't make sense that people will come to these remote places, he asks Kim to keep it in mind since he's a guardian. Meanwhile, Hajin kicks the ball and it flies right over the net where Maru is acting as a keeper. Immediately, the girl next to Hojin tells him he's terrible and says his skills aren't getting better. Hajin tells her to shut it. Nearby, Taishin rushes to get back the ball from the gate, but he finds a huge truck parked outside the gate. Inside the building, Kim thanks one of the girls named Soyeon for helping them pack the clothes before the rain started. He adds that he's always thankful to her, but she tells him not to mention it. Suddenly, Taeshin runs in while panting and looking bruised. Surprised, Kim asks him why he looks like this and asks if he fell down while playing, but Taeshin tells him some creepy men took everyone. He adds that they took Hyung, Nuna, and everyone else. Still surprised, Kim asks him if he means they were kidnapped, but one of the men enters and jokingly explains that it's not kidnapping. Immediately, Kim demands to know who he is, but the man tells him that it's nice to meet him. The man looks much like a skeleton, and introduces himself as a scientist dispatched by Blue Moon City. The man says his name is Nogel, and says that they came here looking for excellent young talent who could help the city. He adds that they're fortunate to have found as many as 9 children in this shabby place. He explains that he'd like to smile, but he can't because he doesn't have any eyelids or lips. Immediately, Kim demands to know what he's talking about and asks him if he's the rumored kidnapper. Nogel finds it weird that he's referring to them as kidnappers again and tries to clarify, but another man who's leading a team admits that they're human traffickers. He tells them that they'll eliminate them and take the kids. The man reminds Dr. Nogel that he was informed not to reveal his identity, but Nogel playfully apologizes that it came out without him realizing it. Eventually, the leader admits that they hadn't expected to find so many kids here, and he tells Kim that they need to take Taeshin with them. 2 men immediately step forward to take the boy, so the principal pushes Kim and the 2 kids away and tells them to get out of here right now while he slows them down. The principal blocks the 2 men, but the leader puts a bullet in his chest immediately. While the principal looks at his perforated chest in shock, the leader calls him a fool who thinks he can fight. The man says he's sick of running into people who try to play the hero, so he fills up their bodies with bullets so they can get it over with. With the principal and Kim down, the man tells the men to take the kids so they can leave before the sun is up, and the kids try to wake up their guardians. When the men pick them up, they protest that they let them go, but their words fall on deaf ears. When the trucks drive away, Kim, who's in a pool of blood, wonders what's going on. He can't believe they got dragged into something they heard from rumors. He had thought it was other people's business, especially because no one else comes to the school apart from them. This place was a dreamlike home for him and the kids, since they had nowhere to go after the war destroyed the slums. He had thought they would be happy here forever, but that dream has been destroyed. To him, this is a nightmare, but the principal soon gets up and tells him this is reality. The principal tells Kim that many people die in the slums daily, and he had wanted to at least protect the kids by making a school in the mountains. He considers himself pathetic for never getting around to doing that, so he asks Kim to protect the future of the kids and covers his face with the red mask. After covering his face with the mask, the principal collapses, and Kim's eye opens. Suddenly, his face morphs into that of a red beast, and he gets up filled with rage. Meanwhile, one of the men asks another colleague why they had to move the truck separately, so the guy explains that they did that as a measure in case they're being followed. The guy still finds it annoying that the 2 of them are always left with the kids. When they load up the kids in the back, the driver tells the other person to get in so they can leave. But the angry guy asks that they wait a bit so he can take his last smoke. This annoys the driver, so he mumbles to himself and doesn't notice when the face of the guy taking a smoke becomes grim. Impatient, the driver asks him what's wrong, but he turns back to see someone else with hands stained with blood. It turns out to be Kim, who has morphed into a huge man with a red head just like the red man. Apparently, he had cracked the poor guy's skull with a punch, and he tells him that he's in a non-smoking area. When he turns to look at the driver demands to know who the hell he is, but steps on the gas before he can answer. Immediately, Kim grabs hold of the trunk and lifts the car with one hand. He asks the driver how he can dare kidnap his kids and smashes the bus into the ground, which is enough to eliminate the kid anyway. Shortly after, Soyeon comes out with a headache after the impact and sees something weird. Outside, the driver tries to shoot Kim, but he's unable to because he's hanging from one hand by his throat. Eventually, Kim asks him if he's done struggling, so the man calls him a monster and asks who he is. Surprised, Soyeon refers to Kim as Redman. However, Kim tells the guy that he's an elementary school teacher and knocks off his head with a punch. Somewhere else, another man makes another announcement about how people have a status that's decided at the time of their birth. He explains that those who are of noble blood are blue, and those who are of filthy blood are red. In front of them, several people from the slum listen to his speech, and he reminds them that they are different. Meanwhile, Kim laments that the mask won't come off. He tries to force it off him, but it doesn't work. When he becomes angry, he knocks a chair away. Because of the mask, his anger refuses to go down. Suddenly, he hears Soyeon's voice and she asks him if he's become Redman now. He replies that it's not possible because he doesn't look like the hero, then angrily knocks a chair in the air. He claims he's just a monster, and Soyeon starts to cry because he's scaring her. Because of the mask, Kim angrily tells her to stop crying and speak properly. Then he tries to pull off the mask again. When he becomes frustrated, he smashes his head into the ground and tells her he's sorry because he shouldn't have taken out his frustration on her. He explains that he's not in his right mind and asks her to give him some time to think. Moments later, Kim goes to bury the principal and sits by the grave. For some time, he wonders who on earth the principal really was and why he had this mask. In a flashback, Kim was swamped by some men who were angry to see him. They beat him up and told him that they had warned him not to ever run into them again. When they realize he's not reacting no matter how much they hit him, they leave him alone. They leave him for dead, and the principal eventually finds him in terrible condition. He asks Kim if he can survive in this cruel world since he's so weak. But Kim asks him if there's any point in surviving in this kind of world. The principal finds it comical that he's grumbling while surviving just fine, just like a kid. He tells Kim that there's a perfect place for a kid like him and asks him to follow him. When he takes Kim to the school, Kim is shocked that he treated him like a kid and now wants him to be an elementary school teacher. The principal explains that it's a bias to think a teacher only needs to teach and reminds him that he can't make him a student since he's a full-grown adult. Regardless, Kim insists that he can't be a teacher, and he had just come here because he had nowhere else to go, and he considers running away from there. Eventually, he got used to the whole thing. Sometime later, he asks the principal why he chose him since there are more pitiful people in the slums he could have chosen. The principal says he knew the first time he saw his eyes. He tells Kim that he's foolishly kind and weak, which is the reason he liked him. He also adds that he's never been careless in how he treats the kids, and he seems to consider it common sense that kids are equal to their teacher. The principal tells him that he believes in him, and tells him to take his place if something ever happens to him because kids need a school. In the present, Soyeon cries and begs him not to leave because it's dangerous. Kim admits that it might be dangerous, but he explains that he needs to go save the others. He reminds her that they're also part of their family, and he's worried about them too. He tells her it might be hard, but he's certain she'll be able to stay here alone since she's always helped him. Eventually she comes to terms with it and hugs him, then asks that he come back to her. He assures her that he'll come back. Shortly after, Kim heads out into the slums and shocks a poor man to his bones. He asks the man if a truck passed by the day before, but the man begs him and states that he doesn't know. After leaving him, Kim gets angry that the truck didn't pass here and starts to regret not letting the two guys live so he could interrogate them. Meanwhile, the man he just questioned wonders if he has just seen a demon. While thinking about where the trucks could have gone, he wonders if he should go to the red light district. Suddenly, he remembers that the scientist had said that he's from Blue Moon City, and had said his name is Nogel. When Kim recalls that, he realizes that they're not a regular crime group, and that the city is behind this kidnapping. Angry, he decides to go to the city immediately. Moments later, one of the police officers from the city notifies his senior that a document just came in to notify them that a white truck from the gourmet company that went into the slums isn't back. The senior wonders why the company went to the slums, so the junior explains that they probably went to distribute free food. The senior calls him a fool and asks why they'd give free food to those useless people, and justifies that by saying that the slum people have stabbed them in the back. The senior considers his life crappy because he always has to clean up behind these guys. Moments later, they see Kim approaching and wonder who he is. The senior approaches him and refers to him as a fearless beggar who has come to do some sightseeing. The guy goes toe-to-toe with Kim, then asks him what he's doing at the Blue Moon City main gate. Kim tells him he's looking for a white truck, so the police officer asks him why he's looking for it. Immediately, Kim takes the paper out of the officer's hand and reads about the gourmet company. Annoyed, the officer tells him to give the paper back, so Kim slams the paper into his face and smashes his head into the ground. The other officers are shocked, so Kim asks them which one of them knows where the gourmet company is. He says he'll spare whoever speaks, but one of the officers immediately starts shooting. In a split second, Kim knocks him into the city wall and tells him to listen till the end while others are talking. While the other guy looks at his mate who's hanging out in the wall, Kim asks him if he's going to shoot too. The poor guy immediately agrees to guide him to the gourmet company. However, he explains that there's a huge wall between them and the gourmet company, so they can't reach it. He adds that they'd have to wait because it can only be opened from the inside. Apparently, it only opens on nights when the moon's out, which is about 6 hours from now. The guy's actually lying, and he plans to call in reinforcements in that time. Before he knows what's going on, Kim grabs his shirt and jumps to the top of the wall. The man screams and starts to cry, so Kim tells him to shut up and help him spot the gourmet company from the top of the wall. For some background, we learned that around 100 years ago, those who were chased out after the rebellion failed lived poor lives. However, those who remained together had to fight for limited resources. There was no unity among them, and they scattered to walk their own ways. As time went by, different future generations divided into Slum Street, Fashion Street, Red Light Street, Graveyard Street, and so on. On the other hand, the heroes who protected the nation built safe walls and huge buildings over the ruins with large corporations. They were the ones who founded the Blue Moon City of Wealth and Honor. Kim wonders what's so honorable about it since everything is in ruins. The only thing different seems to be huge buildings, and it looks different from the rumors he heard about Blue Moon City being lined with buildings made of gold. However, the police officer explains that the area close to the wall was removed from the development, but corporations like the Gourmet Company are built there, a bit far away from the proper buildings which are downtown. The police officer also secretly worries that they're far away from civilization and that there's no one who can rescue him. He hopes to be able to drag Kim in the direction of downtown, so he suggests that he goes straight ahead and turn right. Out of nowhere, a lady standing nearby corrects him that that's not the correct way. The police officer is shocked, so the girl tells him that the Gourmet Company is left, not right. The police officer starts to sweat bullets, wondering who this girl is. This annoys Kim, so he asks the officer if he thinks he's a joke just because he had a chat with him. Immediately, the officer begs him to spare him because he made a mistake. Kim thanks the lady for the info and asks her who she is. She replies that her name is Panda, and she's a high school teacher in Fashion Street. She guesses that he's probably from Slum Street judging from his dressing. Kim wonders what she's talking about. So she explains that Fashion Street is quite far from the slums. Apparently it's a street managed by Finger Chain, a clothing business. When she asks about him, he introduces himself as an elementary school teacher in Slum Street, and she finds that awesome. She considers this a great encounter since they have the same job and destination, so she suggests that they head there together. Kim asks her to do whatever she wants, but the police officer can't believe another outsider has found their way in. He starts to imagine himself in prison with a life sentence because permitting outsiders to intrude is a felony for a gatekeeper. He's certain his life is over, but the lady asks Kim why he's taking the bald gatekeeper with him. Meanwhile, in the Gourmet Company, a teenage girl wakes up and wonders where she is. Nearby, there seem to be several wrapped bodies. She remembers that she and her sister were taken by some men in a white truck on her way back from school. She looks around but doesn't see her sister, and she can't look around the dark room because her hands are tied. She soon hears someone coming, and one weird-looking zombie guy steps in with a butcher's knife. The guy approaches the wrapped bodies and takes a few of them on his shoulders. When one of the packages drops, the girl is shocked to see the face of a dead person exposed under the wrapper. The big guy picks up the dropped package and drags it with him as the blood smears on the ground. Immediately, the girl realizes that all the things wrapped in the room she's in are actually dead bodies of people that were kidnapped. When she soon hears another sound, it turns out to be another man who seems glad to find her. He asks her if she's Rai, shows her a finger chain logo, and tells her he's here to save her. The girl sees the logo and realizes he's from Fashion Street. The guy explains that he got lost trying to figure out the building's layout, but he assures her he'll bust her out. When she starts to make noise, he tells her he knows she must be scared of being alone at such a young age. She still tries to make some noise to draw his attention, so he asks her to quiet down so they don't get caught. When he looks backward, he sees a very morbid skeleton head staring back at him. The head has no eyes and states that it smells the unfamiliar scent of a man. Immediately, the guy jumps out to face the horrifying monster. However, the head splits open and exposes shark-like teeth. The being asks someone if he can eat the man, then opens its mouth wider to start feeding. Meanwhile, the gatekeeper leads them to the Gourmet Company. When they get there, some people at the front counter welcome them and state that they have kind prices and great taste. Panda notices that there's a lot they can eat there, and the gatekeeper looks surprised and admits this is his first time here too. The guy at the counter explains that they distribute products after an intense selection process, and he says they've recently signed a contract with Giant Food and will most likely increase their store locations. The guy asks Panda if this is her first time here, and she admits that it is. After hearing that, the guy apologizes that they only serve members today, and asks if they can visit tomorrow since she's a regular customer. The gatekeeper chimes in and affirms that the Gourmet Company doesn't do normal business on Mondays. Panda thinks that's too bad, but the guys in the back suggest to the manager that they let them quickly buy what they need and leave since they're already here. The manager admits that it's against the rules but allows it. Eventually, Panda thanks him and asks if they sell human flesh. Shocked, the gatekeeper mentions that he's only hearing about the human flesh for the first time and almost loses his mind. He asks Panda what she's talking about since there's no way they'd sell something so terrible, but Kim realizes that they must be into cannibalism if they sell human flesh. To everyone's surprise, the manager admits that they have human flesh, but their customers don't call it that. He realizes that their clothes and appearances are quite suspicious, so he asks them where they got the information about them. Immediately, the men behind start to wield their knives and get ready for action. The manager demands to know who they are, but Kim drops his clothes and asks them to tell him who the heck they are instead. He becomes angry and states that there's no cannibalism going on even in the rotten slum street. He demands to know where his kids are, and his mask starts to break open. Suddenly, Panda tells him to calm down, because her intel shows that the gourmet company doesn't use kids as young as elementary students for cannibalism. She tells him they wouldn't eat them even if they took them away. So she admits that she's the one in a hurry because kids in their late teens are sold. Because of how calmly she's speaking, the gatekeeper asks her if she's really in a hurry. Eventually, Kim deduces that this means that the kids are here. When Panda notices his mask has fully restored itself, she wonders if it's related to how angry he is. Kim believes the kids are probably afraid and waiting to be rescued from this strange place, so he needs to find them immediately. Eventually, the manager gets what's going on and realizes they're the guardians of the kids who were recently taken. He says he doesn't know how they got here, but they can't release precious goods to them. Immediately, he asks the men to eliminate them, so the men rush them with knives. As the men rush Kim, he punches one of them and uses the impact of his body to knock two other people into the air. Immediately, the other men rush to attack him because they realize he's the strongest. They attack him at once with their weapons, but they soon realize that he's not bleeding at all. After cutting him, some red strands appear all over his body, so the officer tells the men he was shot and survived that. So knives are a waste of time. Immediately, Kim knocks them all away with one punch, and the gatekeeper wonders if Kim is immortal. He notices that he keeps recovering the more he's injured. Panda realizes that this must be why Kim came here alone, so the gatekeeper asks her what they should do. She says they have to help him, so they both rush forward to lend a hand. While they're running, the police officer wonders what on earth he's doing. He shouldn't be helping people who broke into the city. But he also can't help criminals who are selling human flesh either. For a moment, he remains motionless and wonders whose side he's on. Meanwhile, Panda runs into a big guy with a knife while she's running. The guy almost slashes her head off, but she dodges it. After dodging the attack, she kicks his head to the side and the guy gets a nosebleed. Angry, he calls her the B word, so she slams her briefcase into his head and reminds him to use proper language. Surprised, the police officer praises Panda for her great fighting skills. She admits that fighting is a necessary skill since the street is always dangerous. She tells herself that she's a teacher saving her students, which makes her super strong. So she asks all the men to come at her. When they indeed rush at her with their weapons, she realizes she might have taken things too far. She starts to run in the opposite direction and leaves the officer behind her, who soon begins to run after her too because of the men on their heels. Meanwhile, in the gourmet company underground restaurant, some men enjoy food. Inside the office, the chef shows the men the dish for tomorrow's banquet. He adds that he prepared this with his recently created sauce, but the man tells him that it's not good enough. He insists that it's not impactful or fresh enough, especially since they have important guests coming the next day. He demands to know if this is all the best restaurant of the Blue Moon can offer. He tells the chef that if it's too difficult to prepare a taste that our important guests have never experienced before. Flustered, the chef apologizes, so the man asks what the condition of the girl they brought in recently is. This man is called Yahello, and he's the chairman of the gourmet company. The chef apologizes and explains that the food was lacking because the ingredient was someone from a filthy street. However, the chairman tells him he doesn't care where it's from, and says they'll proceed with the girl for the banquet's main dish. He immediately asks them to bring her so they can put on a great show for the customers who are visiting that day. Meanwhile, the men outside keep getting their behinds whooped and are knocked into the air like golf balls. Panda and the gatekeeper watch in surprise as it seems like it's raining people. Nearby, the manager cries and calls Kim a monster. However, Kim puts his hand through his back and tells him he's the monster for eating people. After he takes him out, Kim regrets it because he didn't get to ask the guy where the kids are, and he hates the fact that this mask makes him act before he can think. Soon after, Panda assures him that she knows where they are, so he doesn't need to worry. Confused, he asks her how she knows, so she shows him a finger chain embroidery patch. Apparently, people with these patches can communicate with just their thoughts. Only the head of Fashion Street, Handsome, can create the article, and she states that Handsome has a superpower that allows her to grant special powers to the things she creates. Meanwhile, Rai is placed on a stage in front of all the men while they bid for parts of her body. One guy bids for her behind with a lot of money, and Rai wonders how these people can be so despicable and do this since she's just a person like them. Meanwhile, the chairman finds it exciting that the prices rose this high and wonders if it's because she's a minor. Eventually, the show anchor explains that other than the stomach and internal organs, they sell everything. The parts that aren't sold are used to make dishes at their restaurant. The auction soon ends, so the people start to chant that it's time to rip the girl up. The dismemberment expert comes up to continue the show, and Rai realizes she's about to be sliced up. She trembles in fear as the guy with knives approaches her with a dark smile on his face. She begs him to stop because she doesn't want to die this way, especially since she hasn't saved her sister. She begs that anyone tries to save her, but the knife guy swings his sword to cut her skull open. As she pleads for a savior, Kim breaks through the roof and stomps the dismemberment expert and the anchor into the ground. The chairman is speechless, and Rai wonders if she's really seeing the Red Man in person. Ray's not sure what she's seeing, especially since she knows Redman is like a fairy tale of someone from 100 years ago. Meanwhile, Kim wonders where this place is, and the guests wonder who he is. Annoyed, he looks up at Panda and asks her why she said the kids would be here. Panda peeks in and considers it strange since the patch pointed to his place. She soon sees Rai, her student, and Rai is happy to see her teacher. Panda rushes to meet her, then playfully asks her if her trip to the city was okay. After taking the tape off her mouth, Rai hugs her with tears in her eyes. Eventually, Panda tells Kim that she thinks his kids aren't here. This annoys Kim, so he asks her if her kids and his being together was false from the start, so Panda quickly apologizes. Meanwhile, the chairman tells his men this is why he said not to touch the fashion street kids, because they've now caused a mess. Suddenly, Panda spots the boss of the gourmet company, so Kim decides that Hyal would know where his kids are. However, Hyal finds it amusing that they want to catch him, so he asks how they can dare to want to catch him when Blue Moon City people can't even lock eyes with him. He tells them to get a proper appointment if they want to see him, and his men soon ambush Kim. They bring out their swords and cut him up with their swords, then Hyal gloats that it's over for Kim. However, Kim smashes in one of the men's heads and tells Hyal that he'd get the appointment at his funeral. After destroying all the men, the guests start to run away when they realize he's the real deal. Hyal is shocked by the sight and he wonders how this guy was able to destroy all his guards in an instant. He immediately calls for his twin guards, so they step out to save the chairman. The twins dash forward to meet Kim with ironclad fists, but Kim levels up with them with his bloody fists. When they meet, his fists crush the metals around theirs and he grabs them in the face. He tells them to get lost and tosses them a few feet behind their master. The twins lay in a pile of rubble with twisted fingers and bloody faces. Suddenly, Hyal gets up and tells Kim this isn't fun at all since the twins are the strongest in his security team. He tells Kim to at least have acted like he's struggling to fight them, but Kim grabs his neck and tells him to cut the nonsense. He demands to know where his kids are being kept. So Hyal points out Ryan and says she's also a kid. Kim tells him he's talking about the kids that were taken from Slum Street, so Hyal recognizes them. He mentions that he wondered why the kids were so pretty despite being from Slum Street and realizes that it must be because Kim has been protecting them. He tells Kim they're not here and tells him to give up because he can't see them anymore. Annoyed, Kim demands a proper explanation. Suddenly, the butcher from before shows up, and Rai warns Kim to be careful. Excited, Hyal refers to the butcher as Woodcutter, and tells him to cut Kim up. With one swift movement, Woodcutter slices up Kim from the shoulder down to his legs. Immediately, Hyal tells Kim that people who are way higher up than him took the kids because they need kids who don't hold a status in Blue Moon City. They needed kids without any rooms whom they could take, mess up, and it wouldn't matter. With Kim chopped in half, Hyal pries his hands off and says he's just taking requests and supplying them as he finds them. He immediately tells Woodcutter to clean up the carcass and take care of the other intruders, but he's shocked when Kim grabs his neck with his detached hand. Enraged, Kim opens his eyes and is shocked to hear the kids aren't here. He tells Hyal he doesn't have any reason to let him live since he doesn't have his kids. Then his body starts to join back to his hands through red strands. Meanwhile, the ladies are surprised to watch him resurrect, and Panda is surprised to see such an amazing recovery ability. They're not as surprised as Hyal, who can't believe that this guy survived after being cut in two. He realizes this guy must be something called an ability user, so he quickly calls out to Woodcutter. Immediately, Woodcutter swings his knife again and slices off Kim's hand at the elbow. Seconds after, Kim's hand grows back, and he asks if they only know how to use blades in this place. This shocks Woodcutter and he screams in horror. Kim also screams in rage and his mask starts to break off. The sound is so loud that the ladies have to cover their ears. Suddenly Woodcutter starts to tremble, so Hyal asks him what a slaughtering monster like him is being scared of. He orders Woodcutter to fight and turn Kim to ground meat, so Woodcutter reluctantly obeys. The huge monster rushes at Kim with a strong punch and knocks him back and leaves a huge fist imprint on his chest. However, it doesn't last for long as Kim immediately pays back the favor and knocks our dear Woodcutter's head into the reverse direction, knocking out a few teeth in the process. With a few more frantic punches, Kim tears out masses of flesh in Woodcutter's body and utterly destroys the monster. At this point, Hyal realizes he's in trouble, and this guy is different. In his time in this business, he's seen many monsters, but he's never seen something this terrible. Eventually, Kim approaches him and tells him the look of horror on his face is worth seeing. He asks him if he has any last words before he eliminates him, so Hyal tells him he's the chairman of Blue Moon City, and he'll become a first-degree criminal if he touches him, and will lose all intel on how to find the kids. Hyal suggests they strike a deal where he'll help him find the kids since he'll need to know where they are. So Kim asks Panda what she thinks. Surprised, Panda eventually says she knows Hyal is just a large corporation owner and doesn't have the power to negotiate with someone higher than himself. She also adds that they can find out the location of the kids immediately using finger chain, so they don't really need him. She excitedly covers up Rai's eyes so she doesn't see the incoming bloodshed, so he all knows he's done for. Kim thanks her for letting him know he's useless and is happy she's helped him not have to rack his brain. With a single punch, Kim smashes his skull. Moments later, Rai laments that one Ajetsi from finger chain died because of her. Panda asks her who she's referring to, so she describes him. When Panda realizes who she's speaking about, she laughs that she referred to the guy as an Ajetsi, which means uncle, since he's just 21 and 2 years older than she is. She tells Rai that he's alive and well, so Rai asks her what she's talking about. Apparently the guy's name is Herbie, and Panda explains that his mission was just to spy. His mission was just to find her, and he was to pass her the patch if chances of help were low and allow Panda to come in by following the patch. She explains that she and the other finger chain group members are trained to keep the Blue Moon City in check, so there's no way he'd get hurt so easily. She assures her that he's probably taking a break at the fashion street, so there's no need to be sad. Rai considers that strange, because she saw the disgusting monster eliminate him. When she thinks about it again, she realizes that the monster that attacked him is still there. Meanwhile, Kim runs into the same monster, or should we say the monster runs into him. The monster identifies his strange smell, but also realizes there's a familiar smell all over him. The monster immediately resolves to eat him, but Kim wonders how this human-faced bean sprout can talk like a human. After breaking the monster apart with his fists, the police officer from before falls out. Kim asks him why he was inside the creature's body, so the officer explains that he was investigating upstairs to look for a clue about the kids when the monster suddenly attacked him. He heroically explains that he hung in there as much as he could, but it was too hard for him to handle alone, and he got eaten. However, Kim sees through his pretense and asks if he just got hurt after taking his chance to escape during the previous commotion, and the officer admits he did. Suddenly, Panda shows up and is glad to see the both of them here. She refers to the officer by the name Tansai. When Kim asks where she was, she explains that they were in the chairman's office, and she adds that they've decided on their next destination, which is a place called Giant Foods. Kim asks if that's a huge corporation as well, but Tansei remains speechless. She explains that Gourmet Company and Giant Foods are both similar businesses, and their chairmen have a long-standing connection, so much so that they're sworn brothers. Apparently, the only reason Gourmet Foods could even be called a large corporation was because of Giant Foods' help. Panda also shows him pictures of some kids from the intel that both companies exchanged. From the paper, it's clear that Giant Foods took Rai's sister Ramo and one of Kim's students because their bloods were compatible for something. Kim recognizes the girl they took as Hyunjong, so Panda suggests they head there before the feedback she requested for the location of the other finger chain kids comes back. When Kim asks what direction they're going in, Panda admits she doesn't know, and they turn to the officer. Immediately, Tansai begs that they let him go because Giant Foods is really dangerous. He explains that Chairman Og was one of the people who stopped the revolt, and he's one of the Blue Bloods. He insists that he's on a different level and they'll get eliminated. When Kim wonders what a Blue Blood is, Panda explains that it's what the Blue Moon City's pillars are called. They're a handful of tycoons, so Kim asks what's the big deal about that. However, the officer says Kim can say that, but they're asking him to put his life in jeopardy. When Kim grabs him and asks if he'd rather pass away by his hands, Tansai offers to show them the fastest way. Shortly after, Panda tells Rai that she needs to return home now and offers to follow her on the way outside. When Panda holds her hands, Rai feels the warmth in her hands, and she becomes calmer. She suddenly starts to feel fatigued and decides to leave this horrible place to get back home, especially since she misses her house and school. Suddenly, her stomach turns again when she remembers that Ramo is still caught in all this. She remembers all the gruesome sights of dead bodies she's seen, and an image of her dead sister flashes across her mind. Immediately, she becomes alert and asks the others to take her with them. Kim wonders if she's referring to Giant Foods and asks why they'd take a kid there, but Rai insists that she has to go. Kim doesn't agree, so Rai tells her that her little sister is in the city. However, Kim tells her to entrust her sister's life to Panda. When Rai insists that she will go, Kim says she isn't. It soon turns into an argument, and the others just look at the two of them alternating between no's and going. When she gets exasperated, Rai tries to get permission from Panda, and Panda says she can. Annoyed, Kim asks her what she means by that, and he's so angry his entire mask breaks off. The mask even gets into her mouth, but Kim asks her if she's out of her mind and why she'd bring a kid with them. When Panda tastes the piece of the mask that got into her mouth, she notices that it tastes like blood. Kim accuses her of being a mad dog, so Panda explains that Rai is almost an adult, and she's very articulate, so she'll be of help. She adds that Rai has a special talent, and many people thought of taking Rai with them when they were considering Ramo's rescue. Panda adds that she wants to protect her family herself, so Kim turns around and tells her to do whatever she wants, but not to resent him for not trying to stop her more. Rai thanks Panda, so Panda tells her she also wants to stop her too, but she's allowing her because she has special powers. She tells Rai that she won't ask her to fight, but she reminds her that she needs to at least protect herself. She asks her if she'll be okay, and Rai assures her that she will. Meanwhile, a Giant Foods, a worker in the company, informs Chairman Og, who's tearing into raw animal meat and blood, that it's time to leave for the gourmet company. Og agrees, so they don't keep his little brother Hewell waiting. Shortly after, Kim and the others enter an establishment named Zipper. When they ask what it is, the officer explains that it's a high-end store, and there are only a few places like it downtown, but this one is on the outskirts. When they get to the counter, they're welcomed by two people, but Kim wonders if the place they were to visit was a mere clothing store. Panda corrects that this isn't a mere clothing store and brings out her finger chain patch. The counter attendant recognizes the patch, so Panda explains that this place is a hideout that Fashion Street put in the city. The man asks Panda what her business here is, so she tells him they're here for preparations before a mission. The man acknowledges that, and the woman by his side proceeds to open up a huge zipper that exposes a passageway, which shocks Tansai and Rai. Meanwhile, Handsome, the boss of Fashion Street, looks around while on the roof. She's the one who turned the wasteland into Fashion Street on her own, and she's always remained cautious of Blue Moon City. She's cautious of the city because she knows about their corruption. Just in case Blue Moon City were to invade them, she decided to create the group Finger Chain, a loyal group of people who joined them so they could protect themselves from Blue Moon. These people merged into the normal world and became Handsome's eyes, ears, and hands. Meanwhile, Rai is surprised that Zipper is part of the Finger Chain group, especially since it's operating in Blue Moon City. Moments later, they're given a place to stay, and Rai decides to take a nap. When the man learns that they need the location of the kidnapped slum kids, he comments that this work has a lot of risks attached. However, he decides to give it his all since it's Panda who's asking. When Kim thanks Panda, she jokes that he knows how to properly thank someone, so he demands to know what kind of person she thinks he is. She comments that it's because she's never seen him not angry, so he blames it on the punks that kidnapped his kids. He slams the table so strongly that it wakes Rai up, so he apologizes to her. Eventually, the man in charge of Zipper comments that Kim's act of eliminating the gourmet company on his own moved them greatly, and they now consider him their ally. He adds that the hideout they have in the city to escape surveillance may be small, but they have a force of skilled people who can provide great results. Soon after, Panda wonders how the four of them will be able to get all the way to Giant Foods, especially since the surveillance cameras can catch them and send the cops if they go on foot. Kim asks the man if he can't join them in the fight, but the man apologizes that their first mission is to become shadows in the city, and they won't be able to reveal themselves easily. Also, because this could lead to war between the city and the streets, he advises them to avoid clashing with the police. He adds that even bringing the police officer with them isn't satisfactory. Tansai starts to panic, hoping they won't get rid of him. After quickly looking around, he spots some pipes and frantically suggests that they enter through a subsidiary company of Giant Foods. When Panda asks him to elaborate, he mentions the company called Bingo Delivery, which specializes in delivering frozen goods. Apparently, they installed pipes all over the city to avoid goods from melting while driving. Tansai explains that he doesn't know if the pipes lead all the way to the Giant Foods headquarters, but he's sure that going through the pipes will reduce the area they'd have to cover. After some silence, everyone admits that it's a good idea, and Tansai is relieved that they think so. He mentions that he's been told he's witty, but Rai wonders if he's really on their team. Later, Tansai shows them a map of the location of the closest Bingo Delivery branch, which is 10 minutes from where they are. But since they're on the outskirts, they don't need to hide from cameras while they head there. Kim immediately decides to go there, but the man in charge of Zipper tells him to take some clothes and wear them on his way. Even though they're going underground, he points out that going around the city with his upper body exposed will be problematic. Kim is intrigued by this, but the man tells him he has clothes that will fit him perfectly. Meanwhile, Chairman Argus Coates is pulled by a couple of rhinos while he's followed by a security detail. Shortly after, his assistant jumps down from the coach and lays down a red carpet for his boss, while the other security men stand by. The assistant explains that they've reached their destination, so Og steps out and points out that he can smell blood from out there. He states that he's getting hungry and looks forward to the dishes Hial has prepared for him. While they walk in, the assistant considers it strange that the gourmet company didn't reach out to them today or come out to welcome them. When they reach the entrance, they're shocked to find a corpse laid over the entrance. Chairman Og wonders what on earth happened here, so the chef rushes out to address Chairman Og and Barry, the assistant. Barry asks him if he's an employee here, and the chef says he is. When Barry asks him what happened there, the chef explains that an unidentified man in a red mask took out the chairman and all of the employees who fought him. Shocked, Barry asks if it was a street gang, so the chef agrees that it probably was. He adds that the guy had comrades, but he was the only one who went on this rampage. The chef explains that the guy is a monster who doesn't die no matter how many times you shoot him. He explains that even Woodcutter couldn't stop him and adds that he hid during the whole thing. Barry asks him where the group went, so the chef explains that they went downtown. He adds that he also noticed that a police officer was among their group, a woman wearing sunglasses and a young girl. This surprises Barry, and he wonders if it's a real police officer or just camouflage. Eventually, Barry thanks him for the info and starts to strangle him. Barry says it's a good thing the information didn't spread since it happened in the outskirts and chokes the life out of the chef. As the chef asks why he's doing this, Barry tells him it's because that's the kind of thing they do. After he cracks the guy's neck with one hand, he stuffs him into his suit pocket, and the full man fits in there. Barry mentions that finding those who survived and ran might take some time, but the chairman immediately calls out to him. Angry, Og demands to know how they can dare eliminate his friend in Blue Moon City. He tells Barry to find the kid who committed this crime and bring his corpse to him so he can chew him up. Immediately, Barry says he'll hire a skilled assassin to get rid of the person. Meanwhile, Kim changes in the dressing room, so Panda asks him how the new clothes are. She tells him he's lucky because she can't believe Handsome's crafted collections were here, because those clothes have the power to absorb shock and cause recovery just like him. When Kim comes out, he confesses that it feels good to wear it, but Panda corrects that the clothes are more than good. Apparently, they're rare clothes that can't be bought with money, and Panda adds that she customized this one for him too. She says they're doing this to increase their chances of their plan succeeding, and the man in charge of the store says they're letting him borrow it. When Kim steps out, the others are surprised to see the name Redline Kim customized on the back of the cloth. He steps out and proposes they immediately start looking for the kids. Moments later, at the bingo delivery station, a man stands in front of a group of soldiers. They refer to him as Chief, and he heartily greets them back. The chief explains that they've received a message from Giant Foods. Apparently, because of the incident at Gourmet Company, they've been told to shut down the Gourmet Company's part. He promises to tell them the details later after their deliveries, but he encourages them to go out today with all their strength. This motivates the men, and the chief continues until their morale is high. When he asks them to open the shutters, they open a huge door and unveil a room full of ice. The icebreakers are the first to charge in with hammers and start breaking the ice into pieces. Next, the distribution team is told to go in while another person directs them to the pipe they'll put each product in. The product numbers are etched into the ice, and the distribution team members send each ice block tumbling through the huge pipes so they can be delivered to their destinations. While the ice blocks make their way through the pipes, the chief tells them they're all in great shape that day. But the guy behind the chief suddenly asks if he's not cold since he's not wearing a sweater. The chief says that this cold is nothing compared to his passion and claims he can even go topless. Suddenly, one of the shutters opens, and the chief wonders what's going on. After the shutter opens, Kim appears and greets them with a good morning. In a flashback to 30 minutes before, Kim and the others infiltrate the base, and he wonders why the workers carelessly spread their clothes on the lines when they can be taken. Panda explains that there are no thieves in the city, which surprises Kim. Furthermore, Tansai adds that there are robbery incidents in the city, but clothes are not the things being stolen. Eventually, Tansai tells them he has an idea he got from something a senior mentioned earlier. Apparently, there's a blacklist that large corporations share with each other, and all the people on this list have disappeared. Upon getting these reports, the police did their investigations and found that all these people were frozen to death. Tansai realizes that his senior always considered bingo delivery suspicious. He suspects that they're acting as a normal business when they are actually involved in contract killing. That makes Rai wonder if they'll be quite strong, and Tansai agrees that they must be since the chief here used to be a fighter called Mad Dog. Apparently, the psycho unalived so many people he had to get banned. After dressing up like the workers, Panda proposes they move on to the plan now. She tells Kim that he'll attack them head-on and proceeds to give the others their instructions. In the present, Kim appears after one of the big doors opens. The chief spots him and demands to know who he is, because only authorized people are allowed here. However, Kim tells them they don't need the details and asks them to try stopping him even though he's not authorized to be there. The chief is confused, but Kim tells him he's an intruder and cracks his jaw with a strong punch. The punch launches the chief into a faraway wall, and the workers watch their chief gain wings. The icebreakers quickly rush Kim, and one of them closes in to smash him with his hammer. To his surprise, Kim breaks the hammerhead with his fist, and the guy realizes he's messed up. While confused, Kim greets his face with a fist, and the guy is knocked out cold on the spot. When the others see that this guy broke an ice hammer with his fist, they wonder if he has superpowers. However, the chief's assistant tells the others not to be scared, and motivates them just like the chief did. With newfound motivation, the men rush toward Kim, who's eagerly waiting for them to come at him. He soon starts to knock the men into the air while those behind wonder what on earth is going on. Suddenly, Panda, who is camouflaged as a worker, catches the worker in charge of the roll call and twists his neck. The plan was to enter the place while Kim distracts the men, so she tells the others to head toward a pipe called B44. While they're going, she warns the others because there's a fork in the road that requires a staff member on top to steer the item. When she mentions that they just need to get on the ice and move, Tanzai hesitates and asks her what she means. He asks her what will happen if they slip on the ice, but he suddenly slips and falls on Rai, who's behind him. When they fall on each other, the other workers notice them and overhear them complaining about the slippery floor. The men notice that they're not really workers, so they signal each other that there are other intruders there. They notify the others that the intruders are the ones not wearing work shoes. When they realize they've been caught, Panda takes off her mask and asks Kim to help them get on top of the ice. Annoyed, Kim asks them why they'll make him do all the hard work and eventually get caught. He instantly knocks out a row of men and goes to help the others as they climb one of the blocks of ice. When they're on top, Kim kicks the block of ice to pipe B44, and the guys go with it. They soon start falling through the pipe and Tansai screams like he always does. Immediately, the workers try to chase the intruders who went into pipe B44, but Kim stands at the door and asks where they're going. One of them tells him to finish the fight he started, and that annoys Kim. It turns out to be the chief, who rushes at him and knocks him down. When he has Kim on the ground, our guy wonders how this man is still alive after that punch. The chief insists that he's still alive and won't let such a wild person roam around this facility. Immediately the other workers enter pipe B44 to chase the intruders. Meanwhile, Kim punches the chief again and tells him to stop getting in his way, but the chief doesn't budge this time. He asks Kim what's wrong since he asked him to try to stop him. The chief goes full berserk mode and starts punching him, then asks Kim to try to stop him instead. Meanwhile, some officials gather at the entrance of the city, and a detective takes the testimony of the person who discovered the whole thing. Apparently the officer came to change shifts but found out that 3 of his coworkers were missing. He adds that one of them was quite reserved, and he doesn't know much about him, but the other 2 weren't people who'd disappear without a word. The detective realizes that all traces of evidence seem to have disappeared, and it would be difficult to investigate because it seems someone has cleaned up the crime scene. He wonders if an outsider invaded, but he knows there wasn't anything on the central server about the opening and closing of the main gate recently. However, he knows that the opponent can also be someone with superpowers. The only clue they have at this point is the damage on the main gate, and he figures they probably couldn't fix it quickly because the main gate is made of special material. But he notices that they laid down new asphalt on the road, so he guesses that they most likely would have destroyed the evidence within the city too. Sometime later, a senior police officer comes to tell everyone to evacuate, but the junior wonders why. The man explains that this incident was a simple one because they found the 3 of them, and it ended with their forced dismissal for deserting their post. The detective asks the senior if leaving the work area isn't an unusual thing, and the man agrees but says it's not that big of a deal. The detective approaches him and asks if he's sure, so the man asks if he's saying that he's lying. Eventually, the officer leaves him alone and tells him to ask his higher-ups if he doesn't believe him. He reminds the detective, who he refers to as Aston, that he knows he has jurisdiction here, but he warns him not to get in their way. Meanwhile, the workers from Bingo Delivery chase the block of ice the intruders are riding on. When they close in on them, one of them leaps in the air and almost shaves off Ray's head, if not for Panda's quick movements. Panda helps them dodge and kicks the guy off the ice with a spin kick. After the guy lands on the ground, another worker grabs a hold of the ice, but Rai slams Panda's briefcase on his head. Rai blames Tansai for this because they could have moved safely if he hadn't slipped. Eventually, Tansai confesses that he feels burdened putting the entire burden on Kim, but Rai accuses him of falling on purpose just to get in their way. Tansai responds that she's making him upset after they turned him into an accomplice when he was once a model police officer. Panda tells them to stop yapping, and they realize the chief's assistant has made his way in front of their ice block. Much to their surprise, the guy splits the ice block into 2 parts and separates them, and Panda wonders if he did it with his skate blades. Annoyed, Tansai calls the man a crazy bastard and asks why he didn't just cut the block in half instead of leaving him to wobble on the smaller portion. Rai calls out to Tansai, but Tansai is soon separated from the rest of the group when the pipe leads into 2 other pipes. Eventually, Panda concludes that she was wrong in her judgment. She had thought the person fighting Kim was in the highest position, but she realizes that their boss is here with them. The guy stands in front of them and explains that he's from another company, but confesses that he's in a higher position. Apparently, he's the ice chamber dispatch director, Chamin. Chamin demands to know how they can dare mess with Bingo Delivery, which is an associate of their ice chamber company. He asks to know what lunatics hired them, but Panda dashes at him and states that she's a teacher and not a mercenary. Chamin considers her a joker, and they both slam their legs against each other in some sort of taekwondo move. While they're fighting, Shamin realizes that Panda isn't a small fry even though she ran away from the fight. He realizes that Panda resembles someone he knows. Meanwhile, Rai notices a quake in the upper part of the pipe, and the roof comes crashing down on the other workers. This distracts the director, so he realizes the workers he came with have become an obstacle. He jokingly asks Panda, who's trying to attack him, to take it easy. After dodging several of her attacks, he does a frontal kick with the skate blades, and Panda is almost impaled, but she quickly dodges it. Immediately, she throws her back into the air toward the director and kicks him in the face, shattering his glasses. Meanwhile, Taisai is relieved that he's not being chased, and he wonders why Rai would say he fell on purpose. He wonders what she takes him for and realizes that Rai is pretty clever. He actually did fall on purpose, and he smiles as he wonders why they think he'd help someone from the street. He's glad the pipe branched out into a different place, so he plans to get out and request backup so he can turn everything around. Inside the bingo delivery site, Kim smashes a huge block of ice that the chief throws at him. Immediately, the chief jumps toward him, lifting another block of ice and smashing it on him, referring to him as the best. The impact knocks Kim into a wall behind him, so the chief tells him that the guys from the city make fighting boring by adding their complicated techniques. He adds that a fight between men is always one where both sides hit and take hits. When he approaches Kim, Kim tells him he doesn't care about his philosophy and charges at him. He rams into the man, but the chief tells Kim he likes that he doesn't care too, and that they can become great friends. Using the weight of his attack, the chief pulls Kim backward and smashes his head into the floor. At this point, our guy realizes he might have chosen the wrong words, but he grabs the chief's legs and tells him he's not interested in him. He swings the man into the air and smashes him on the ground with a force so strong that he bounces back into the air. While he's still in the air, Kim punches him in the chest, and the man pours out blood from his mouth. The punch is so strong that the chief is thrown several feet away into the opposite wall, so Kim clarifies that all he cares about are his kids. Shortly after, he makes his way to the B-44 pipe, but the chief soon gets up. After hearing him talk about children, the chief tells him he finds it unexpected that he's married. However, he tells Kim that it's time for them to have a fight since they're all warmed up. Surprised, Kim wonders how this guy hasn't died like other people, so he asks him if he has any superpowers. The chief admits that he does and tears apart his clothes, explaining that he has a superpower that allows him to transform his muscles called damage boost. Kim calls him a cockroach, but the chief playfully considers it a compliment and charges at him. He lands a punch on Kim's face, so Kim returns the favor with a hit to his chin. They both continue their fast-paced, fiery exchange of punches, and the chief confesses that this is very fun. At one point, they both take a lot of damage, and their punches suddenly smash into each other. The force is so strong that both men are pushed backward. Eventually, the chief laughs and asks Kim if he's going to admit that he can't win against him. The chief insists that his superpower is an unbelievable monstrous ability because he can change the shock he receives into muscles. He explains that in a fight against superpowers, the important factor is whether or not his ability has the upper hand over the other person's. He tells Kim his power is certainly under, because his attacks will only make him stronger. He asks Kim what he'll do now. Shortly after, the chief lands a punch in Kim's face and knocks him into the air with a punch. The punch creates a huge imprint in his chest and knocks him into a wall. Immediately after, the chief tries to attack him again, but our boy dodges the attack. Suddenly, the chief asks him what's wrong with him because he's been taking hits for a while now, and it seems like he's lost his will to fight. However, Kim realizes that he's truly at a disadvantage, and he can't keep carelessly attacking a guy who will just become stronger. When the chief attacks him again, Kim jumps at him and grabs him in a bear hug. This surprises the chief, and Kim holds him down instead of hitting him. He realizes that Kim is using grappling to counter his skills, but he tells our boy that he's just being clumsy. He turns Kim around and pins him to the ground with one swift move, then points out that it's clear he didn't learn martial arts professionally. The chief explains that his clan wasn't a bad idea, but his skills are lacking. He immediately rips Kim's hands out and starts to laugh maniacally. However, the hand he rips off punches him in the face, much to the chief's shock. Kim soon gets joined back to his hands and he tells the chief he caught him where he wants him. When he pins the chief down, the man playfully accuses him of being worse than him after calling him a cockroach. Kim smashes him into the ground and ensures he eats off the stones in the ground. As he drags the chief around, the man tells him this won't change a thing because his desperate counterattacks will only help him win. Eventually, Kim throws him into a wall and causes great destruction. Smoke covers the place up, but the chief soon appears again with much excitement because things are finally heating up. However, Kim tells him that things are going to become cooler instead, and it's clear that Kim has thrown him into the freezing compartment. When the chief reads the sign, he realizes that Kim caught him just so he can drag him in here. Before he can respond, our guy turns the cold to the max level and tells the chief that he heard they've been eliminating people with his method. This time, he decides to give him a taste of his own medicine. As the door closes, the chief tries to rush out of the freezer and calls him a bastard. Before the door closes, the chief tries to pry the door open with his hands and he warns Kim not to run away from their fight like this. His face is soon reconfigured when Kim lodges a punch there, and our guy asks him why he thinks he's running away. The chief is knocked way back into the freezer, so Kim tells him he's lost the fight. The chief screams in horror, but the doors soon close and our guy is left alone. Suddenly the chief punches Kim through the door, but he catches the punch midair. He tells the chief he's disgusting until the end, and he watches as his entire body freezes up to his hand. Meanwhile, Panda and the director keep fighting. Panda keeps attacking aggressively, but Chimera sharply cuts the side of her face with a quick movement. The attack forces Panda to retreat and it scares Rai. Rai realizes she didn't know Teacher Panda is such a good fighter because she's usually just lazy and chill. She recognizes that the opponent is also really strong, and it seems like Teacher Panda is at a disadvantage. When the guy almost cuts Panda in half, she quickly dodges the attack and knocks him off his feet. The attack surprises Chimera and knocks him off the ice, but he's soon back on his feet and chasing them again. In a moment, he's on them again, and gives Panda an A+ for her effort. He soon slices the ice block in half again, and Panda realizes they're in trouble. The impact shakes where they're standing, and Rai is knocked off the ice top. Immediately, Chimera swoops in to take her, and he puts her back on the ice. He asks her if she's alright, and she reluctantly answers that she is, even though she doesn't understand why he asked. Annoyed, Chimera asks why Panda would bring a minor to such a dangerous situation. Then he asks why Panda would dare call herself a teacher when she can't even look out for the safety of her students. Panda can't give any comments because she realizes he's not wrong. So he approaches her and asks if she sees the difference in their skills. He claims she'd be dead by now if he had brought out his actual skills, so he offers to spare her life if she turns herself into the police. Panda hesitantly confesses that he's gotten stronger than before, then calls his name. This surprises him because he never told her his name. So Chimera realizes that she truly is the person he thinks she is. She asks him if he remembers her now, but Chimera tells her she only resembles that person, but she's not her. He tells someone as half-witted as her can't be compared to the perfect person he's thinking about. But Panda becomes angry that he calls her a half-wit. Angry, she charges at him and promises not to go easy on him anymore because he's her old colleague. When she jumps, Shimmy insists someone like the person he's thinking about would never act so carelessly. Then he dodges and insists she's not the one. Eventually, Panda decides to break out her special ability called matter solidification to change his mind. Her power flows through the ice, and it suddenly turns into water and starts to sink him. When he's drawn in, the water turns into jelly and holds him in, so he wonders if this is really the matter solidification skill. When the water becomes solid again, he confirms that it really is. Her ability is the ability to freely change the state of matter of objects. Eventually, she takes off his glasses and asks if he believes her now. So Charmaine admits that people change. He tells her she's changed a lot, but Panda kicks him in the face because he's now talking nicely. She reminds him he just called her a half-wit and asks if he's supposed to say that to a colleague he hasn't seen for so long. While she continues stamping his face, Rai stops her and asks what she means by the fact that they were both colleagues. Panda asks Rai if she forgot to tell her and mentions that she's from the Blue Moon City. Meanwhile, Tansai finally arrives outside and he excitedly comes down. He wonders why the path was so complicated because he had a hard time getting out. However, he believes he's still in luck because he plans to get out of there and report them. Suddenly Panda calls out to him and asks him what took him so long to get there. Shocked, Tansai sees the whole gang and wonders what on earth happened. He tries to ask how they got here, but Panda only tells him they were worried about him. Suddenly, Kim asks Tansai what he was saying is good when he dropped out of the pipe, so Tansai says that it's good to see them all safe and sound. In a flashback, Hyunjong calls out to Teacher Kim and he remembers how she's always smiling. He tells her to be careful so she doesn't fall, and she soon falls as he warned. Excited, she tells him she fell, but Kim rushes to get some bandages when he sees she sustained a nosebleed. Later he treats the wounds on her knee and she laughs because it stings. He assures her that it'll soon get better, but he's glad it's not Soyoung because she'll be crying. After treating, Kim reminds her to be careful so as not to get hurt next time, and she agrees, to protect Hyunjong, who doesn't cry even in pain. Kim knows a secret that only he and the principal know. In the present, Kim hears Panda's voice and opens his eyes. She asks him if he's sleeping, so he tells her he was just thinking. She informs him that Chamin has woken up and asks him to follow her. Eventually, Chamin refuses to cooperate with her, but Panda tells him that she's not asking for anything special. She asks him to pretend they never came, but Chamin refuses to turn a blind eye to their plan to launch a surprise attack on the nation's pillar, Blue Blood. He's worried that the whole city will be in an uproar, so Kim tells him that he can just die here in that case. Kim tells him they're not asking him for help, but giving him an opportunity. He tells him that his answer will determine what will happen to him and everyone outside his room. Meanwhile, the workers outside wonder how much longer the director will be inside, and one of them decides to go into action if there's any hint of danger to the director. Eventually, Kim tells Jimin that the only reason they're all still alive is because Panda wants it that way. Jimin asks Panda if this is true, so Panda admits that she's doing this because they were colleagues in the past. In a flashback to some minutes ago, Kim asks Panda if she's protecting Jimin because they're from the same city. She says that's not the reason since she left the city and got into fashion a long time ago, so she's not attached to the city in any way. However, she adds that it would be weird if Bingo Delivery suddenly stopped functioning since they pride themselves on fast delivery. She suggests that it would be better to maintain an image that nothing is wrong. She also adds that she knows Jimin well and says he's soft-hearted. She believes he'll take their side if they let him live. In the present, Jimin agrees to help them, but asks them to guarantee that the workers won't be harmed. Kim assures him there won't be a problem as long as they keep their mouths shut. And Rai realizes things are going just as Panda predicted. After that time, everything went smoothly. They used the pipe and traveled out of the city, and the Bingo Delivery workers ignored them as if they weren't there. While they're going, Rai comments that she had expected more of the workers to complain, but Tansy explains that people in the city tend to follow their superiors' orders quite easily. Later, Kim asks Panda if she thinks Jimin is being truthful with them. So she tells him that she thinks he is because he doesn't have any reason to lie to them. In a flashback, Jimin agrees that he understands where they're coming from since it's a disgrace for Blue Moon City to target a kid like that. However, he explains that he can't help them, but he can supply info to them. He tells them that the giant food they're targeting is fake, which surprises them. He explains that the headquarters most people know is just a front, but the real headquarters where Chairman Og stays is somewhere else. Jimin confesses that he doesn't know where the real headquarters is, so Kim wonders if the chief he fought would know the location of the real headquarters. Panda asks if they should defrost him and ask, but Tansei suggests they ask an insider if outsiders don't know the location. When they ask him where they would find an insider, Tansei goes through a list and tells them the industry circle is quite small, so it shouldn't be hard to find. He opens his list to the name of a terrible superior named Cas Plus, who he's been planning to get rid of, so he suggests they grab this guy and just beat the hell out of him, just like their old boss used to do. Later, at the management services called Cas Plus, some guy is beaten up, so he asks his assailant if they really think they're safe. This guy is called Hurin, and he's the chairman of a mid-level company called R Construction. Haran asks his attackers if they don't know his guards, and the police are going to look for him, but the men just smile at him. Their boss asks why all the guys they bring always say the same things, so he asks the hostage if he knows why they're still in his line of work. He crushes his hand and tells him it's because they can get away with it. He explains that the police won't care if a newly successful mid-level company executive suddenly disappears. He tells him he shouldn't have worked so hard that he pissed off his higher-ups. Suddenly, one of the men notices an intruder and asks the person who he is. When the boss hears him, he turns back and notices Kim, so he comments that his physique is even better than that of his henchman. The boss wonders if this guy is a bodyguard, and even Hurin doesn't recognize him. Eventually, Kim tells them he doesn't know their hostage and explains that he was just passing by and wanted to ask him something. The boss tells him he can ask the question when they've dropped him beside him, and he tells him he can't let him go because he's seen what they're doing. The boss tells his men to bring the big guy over there, so they prepare their knives to attack. The boss brings out a knife to give Hurin a makeover, but the boss soon sees someone get thrown out of the glass wall. He thinks Kim was the one thrown out, so he confronts his men for doing that. But he soon realizes he's mistaken. Kim realizes he's made a mistake since Panda said to do this as quietly as possible. However, he remembers that they're still in the outskirts, so there should be no one passing by to notice them. Shocked, the boss insults his men and tells them to hurry up and get this guy. They rush at him with the knives, but Kim slaps the first guy so hard that he breaks a nearby wall with his impact. The men retreat quickly when they see the horrific sight. So one of them concludes that their opponent must have superpowers. Before he can react, Kim closes in the distance and punches all 5 men into the air. When they fall on their backs, our guy laments that these guys are even weaker than the folks at Bingo Delivery. This shocks the boss, so Hurin wonders if this guy is here to save him. When Kim approaches the boss, he starts to sweat bullets and suggests he go ahead with the question he wanted to ask. However, Kim slaps him across the face first and knocks him down, then tells him to get up because he hit him gently. In a flashback, Kim thinks about Tansei's plan to beat their target up and asks him about giant food. He asks him what would happen if their target doesn't know anything. So Tansei suggests that they'd have to do anything to satisfy him if they don't want to die. Moments later, some vehicles arrive in front of the Cas Plus Management Services building, and the men hurry up so they can save Hurin. They're led by the vice chairman of the R Construction Company, Hokya. One of the men asks him what will happen if they're too late, but Hokya tells him not to talk stupidly because his Hurin isn't someone who will give up so easily. They rush in, and Hokya loudly calls out to Hurin so he'll know they're there. When Huron hears the voice of his younger brother Hoka, he calls out to him. So Hokia comes to check on him. Hoka finds him injured, but his injuries have been covered up with bandages. It annoys Hoka that these gangsters dared to touch his face, and he promises that he won't let them go. Suddenly the boss shows up to welcome them with a pretty disfigured face. Confused, Hoka asks what's wrong with his face. So Huron introduces him to Kim, the guy who saved his life. Behind him, the boss and the others raise up their hands as punishment. Immediately, Hoka joins his brother to thank Kim for saving his life. Huron also promises to find a way to repay him for helping him out. However, Kim just tells them to be quiet because he's busy. The men who he has now taken hostage begin to make several calls to get other people to help them do investigations about the location of giant foods, no matter how much it costs. When Kim returns to ask the boss if he got any info, the poor guy says, they've not gotten anything yet. So Kim grabs his face and says his answer isn't satisfactory. The boss apologizes, but Kim tells him to speed things up if he wants to live. Eventually, Hoka asks his brother what Kim is up to, so Huron explains that Kim is looking for the hidden headquarters of giant food. Confused, Hokia asks if that means the popularly known headquarters is fake, so Huron admits that it's common among companies. Moments later, Hokia interrupts Kim and apologizes. He asks him if he's really looking for the giant food headquarters, and when Kim says he is, Hoko points out that these gangsters aren't likely to know the place. He offers to give him a location where he can get the info instead. When Kim asks if his method will be more effective, Hokyo decides to explain better. He explains that giant food would most likely be hiding a real headquarters in a really tall building, especially since the oldies of the blue blood are too proud to make their headquarters in a small building. Since they have a vague idea of what the size will be, Hokyo suggests that their construction company can look into shady-looking buildings. Intrigued, Kim tells him he'd appreciate it if he can do that for him. But Hoka explains that he's just repaying his debts. He's doing this so they won't be indebted to such a suspicious person. He realizes that Huron is a great businessman, but he's soft-hearted, and will go out of his way to do whatever he can for this man. So he tries to ensure they clear their debt quickly. Suddenly, Huron hugs him for doing a great job as always, then also offers to look into the people who own the buildings they look through. Shocked, Hokyu asks him why he'd make such a pledge when he's on a blacklist and could be eliminated any second from now. He reminds him he's not in a position to be giving out such help, but Huron insists that it's nothing to put his life on the line to help his savior. When they start to argue, Kim tells them he can look into the people himself, and suggests that Huron takes care of himself. Amused, Huron accepts his grace and generosity. Hokyu quickly drags him away before he makes any more promises. But Huron quickly tells Kim he can always call him if he ever needs something again. Shortly after, Kim meets with another group and asks them to do something for him. This group is an illegal service company named Mega Hammer. They're surprised to hear that he wants them to look into buildings, and he soon meets with another group called the Chicken Restaurant, who are actually arms dealers. Those guys point guns at him. Then he goes to a cleaning service that specializes in cleaning corpses called SOC, but they ask him who he is. After that, he meets up with an assassination service called Bullring, but they ask him if he wants to meet his demise. In every instance, Kim mops the floor with their faces until they promise to do his bidding. Meanwhile, Tansei crosses off names on his list and is certain they'll find giant food in no time at this rate. Panda is also glad to hear that Kim met the R Construction brothers because they're famous for being genius businessmen. She trusts that their method will be effective and watches as the men who Kim has forcefully recruited work tirelessly to get the information. Kim tells her that they need to find the info soon because too much time has passed already. In his mind, Kim tells Hyunjong to wait for him a bit more because he's coming to save her. Meanwhile, Hyunjong laughs heartily, and the man she's playing cards with is amused by the fact that he lost again. When Hyunjong celebrates the fact that Ramo won again, the man asks Ramo if she's certain she's never played cards before, and Ramo admits that this is her first time. The man reminds her that she won't grow up to be a proper adult if she lies, but she insists that she's telling the truth. Eventually, he suggests they play one last round. While he's shuffling the cards, Hyunjong asks him when they'll be able to return to their homes, so the man explains that he's not certain. He informs her that he's just the caretaker for kids, and they don't tell him those details. When a bell suddenly rings, Rama takes note of it and realizes it's the 56th time she's heard the bell. Eventually, Hyunjong admits that she likes spending time with this man and Rama, but she wants to see her family. She also adds that it's quite suffocating to be in a room like this. The man asks her if she has family, so Hyunjong starts to list all her family members. When she mentions teachers, the man points out that her teachers are working a job and they're not family. When Hyunjong insists that they are, he agrees with her. He tells her that it's dangerous to go out now because there's a dangerous monster going around wearing a red mask to eliminate people around the streets every night. Hyunjong finds that scary and exciting, so the man tells her it's better to stay where they are. When the man mentions that he heard there's also a woman wearing sunglasses with him, that catches Rama's attention, so she wonders if he's talking about Teacher Panda. She soon dismisses the idea, so the man adds that the woman has been eliminated since then. The bell rings, and Ramo counts that it's the 57th time. She asks the man if he was lying, so he laughs and says he was. However, because of how surprised she sounded, the man asks Ramo if this person is someone she knows. Surprised, Ramo begins to stutter, so the man tells her it's okay. He asks her if she wants to hear something funny, and confesses to her that he's from the streets too. Hyunjong doesn't hear what he told Ramo, but this man assures Ramo that she can trust him because there's no way he'd sell out his acquaintances. This makes Ramo relieved. But Barry soon enters the room and asks this man named Razul to come out because he shouldn't be there again. Razul laments because it's time for him to go, so he tells the kids that they'll play some other time. Shortly after, Razul and Barry enter the passageway. Barry asks Razul if he's not getting close to the kids since he's been visiting them for a while. But Razul assures him that he's just bored. Barry reminds him that these kids are ingredients and he can't get attached to them. Suddenly, Razul asks Barry to pay him $100 if he wants to know something. Confused, Barry protests because he doesn't even know what kind of information he's paying for, so Razul tells him he'll never know in that case. When Barry hands over the money, Razul tells him the guy who attacked the gourmet company is the same person who's looking for the kids. Barry finds that interesting but reminds him that the man wearing the red mask didn't seem to recognize the kids, so Razul mentions that he could have hired a mercenary and brings up the news of a red-masked serial killer that came up a few years ago. Because of that, Barry decides that they have to be prepared. So he offers Razul a lot more money to capture and bring those guys to him. He tells him there'll be more rewards if he's successful. When Razul asks for their location, Barry tells him he doesn't know. So Razul replies that there's no way to get them if he doesn't know where they are. When Barry insists that he's paid him for that information, Razul decides to figure things out by himself. Before they part ways, Barry hopes he won't fail him, especially since he's the best killer he knows. Razul explains that he only receives monetary compliments, but he soon heads out to go hunting for his target. Sometime later, Kim angrily knocks open a door and tells Panda she was wrong again. She had told him this was the giant food headquarters, but he's angry to find out that it was just a small fry criminal's hideout. Panda asks him to calm down because they just fell for fake hints that Giant Foods has spread out. Rai wonders if Giant Foods knows they're coming, but Tansy says he doesn't think so because they would have tried to use the police to stop their investigation if that was the case. Kim decides he should have just gotten Zipper to look into information about Hyunjong, but Panda tells him Zipper's information is restricted, and it would probably be out of his reach to look for the kids. She proposes they leave the place before they get caught, so they leave. Meanwhile, Razul watches them from the top of a building. Somewhere else, Chairman Og tears through a full pig that was placed on his table, along with so much other meat. After that, he drinks a cup of something that looks like blood. Suddenly, Barry appears and greets him, then asks him how his condition is today. Chairman Og tells him it's good and informs him that the doctor says his body is stabilizing. Because of that, Barry suggests that they move forward with the blood ritual that week, then asks if he's decided on which child to use for the ritual. When Og hesitates, Barry reminds him he should only choose one child, because 2 kids would be too hard on his body. He also informs him that the guys who took out Yahello are searching for the kid named Ramo, and then he suggests they take her as a hostage in the worst-case scenario. Eventually, Og chooses one of the kids. Meanwhile, the group keeps following the leads they've gotten, and Tansai mentions that there are only 2 places left that might be the headquarters based on their investigation. One of them is a company called Every Pad that manufactures displays, and another is a big company that produces mineral water called Mineral Mountain. He believes one of the 2 is a cover-up company that should be Giant Foods HQ. Kim mentions that Mineral Mountain sounds suspicious, especially since they have such a large building from just selling water. He wonders why they're selling water in the first place, so he's told that the rebel forces contaminated all the water around Blue Moon during the war. From that time, all citizens had to buy water to drink, and Mineral Mountain succeeded and made it big since they jumped into the business first. Tansai admits that he doesn't know why the guys at our construction put this huge company on the list. However, he informs them that Mineral Mountain and Every Pad are located in the same place. Because of that, staying too long in one place is certain to make those in the other place notice they're there. Rai becomes distressed when she realizes they only have one chance. Suddenly, they hear someone's voice telling them not to think too deeply because they're both the headquarters for Giant Food. It turns out to be Razul, who explains that Chairman Og likes rhinos, so he purposely built the 2 buildings together in the form of a rhino. He jokes that it doesn't resemble a rhino at all, so Kim asks him who he is. Amused, Razul tells them his name and adds that most people call him Purple. Kim looks confused, but Tansai is shocked when he sees the purple necklace around Razul's neck. Panda is equally shocked, so she tells Kim that they need to get out of here immediately. However, Kim asks Razul if he knows something about the Giant Food headquarters, But Razul just jumps down to meet them, and admits that he does because he's the assassin Chairman Og sent to eliminate them. Razul immediately brings out a card which surprises Kim, but our guy quickly jumps to punch the smug look off his face. Suddenly Kim notices his upper body has been separated from his lower half, and it seems Razul had sliced him with the card. Razul counts that he's taken one down, but Panda shows up behind him to attack. She kicks him in the back of the head, but he doesn't budge. He tells her he senses her movements and asks if she's also an assassin. It turns out that he cushioned her hit with a card behind his back, and he tells her that she's slower than his hands. The card hidden behind his neck springs and blasts Panda away with such violent force that her body shatters a nearby wall. Meanwhile, Tansai freezes nearby, and he can't believe he's seeing the Great Purple in real life. Even though the people of Blue Moon City hated the people from the streets, the city has decided that some of them are a necessary force. These people are bound by the condition of always wearing a purple collar so they can be granted citizenship. There's a rumor that among the purple people, those who are chosen for their battle skills are employed as diplomatic mercenaries. Suddenly, Razul calls out to Tansai and tells him he's cosplaying as a police officer. Tansai almost screams out when he realizes he's been found out, but Razul throws some cards at him and tells him to come out. Razul controls the cards to push him out and pin him down, so he tells him to stay like that for a bit because it'll be troublesome for him to eliminate a real officer. Tansai gladly agrees to stay pinned down and is relieved he wasn't eliminated. Meanwhile, Rai calls Tansai an idiot, but Razul approaches her, and she becomes afraid. When she sees him coming towards her, she activates her superpower to fight against him. Suddenly, Razul closes the distance and excitedly tells Rai that she looks like Ramo. Then he asks if they're sisters. Confused, Rai loses her composure and asks him if he knows Ramo, so Razul tells her he knows Ramo well. When he sticks his hand in his shirt to bring out something, Rai cringes because she's expecting him to launch an attack, but he just brings out a rose and states that he's besties with Ramo. He hands her the rose, and Rai is confused for a minute. Later, Razul asks her if she's Ramo's elder sister, then mentions that he's heard a lot about her, especially that she's a top student majoring in fashion. He also says he heard she's beautiful, but confesses that he thinks Ramo looks cuter. He wonders what to do, especially because he doesn't want Ramo to hate him, so he decides to reconsider eliminating his bestie's family. However, he decides to go ahead with it and assures her that he'll send Ramo over to her soon enough. He brings out his card and with one swift movement, Kim's head is cut off. In a flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Kim rushes to Soyeon's side after she had a nightmare. He soon carries her to calm her down while she tells him about her nightmare. But Hyunjong soon enters. Hyunjong suddenly starts to climb on Kim, and when he asks her what she's doing, she says she wants to climb on him like bugs on branches. Back in the present, a head drops after Razul promises to send Ramo to come meet her, but it turns out to be Kim's. Kim had rushed in front of the girl before Razul could attack her, and Razul wonders if Kim is a red light street mercenary. When Rai sees Kim hold his own head, she screams in horror, but he reminds her that he told her not to come and that she'd just get in the way. He soon puts his head back on, so Razul commends his amazing skill joining back his head. He comments that Kim is immortal because he's never heard of someone with a superpower that lets them regenerate this fast. Nearby, Panda comes out with bruises and prepares to fight the purple-collared dog. She rushes at him from behind, but Razul knocks her away with another one of his cards. She's launched on her back again, and Razul wonders how he can even defeat this kind of guy. Eventually, Kim decides to attack him again, but Razul slices him into many pieces. His plan is to keep eliminating him until he loses his ability to regenerate. However, Kim's body immediately joins back together, but Razul cuts him down into smaller pieces. Rai watches in horror as Kim's body is littered around the place. Eventually, Razul asks him if he really thinks he can rescue Ramo since he's this weak and asks if he's not underestimating Blue Moon City. He confesses that he was expecting someone stronger when he heard some rascal wearing a red mask was going around eliminating subcontractors. He hopes to get more fun out of this, and wishes they were stronger. Meanwhile, Rai realizes Kim can't regenerate properly because he was continuously cut, so she decides to buy him some time. She asks Razul what he meant by saying he'll send Ramo to her soon, and asks if he's going to eliminate her. Razul asks if they don't know, and he decides to explain why giant food is holding Ramo captive. He explains that Ramo is an ingredient. Apparently, Chairman August had cancer for a while and he's over 100 years old. With Blue Moon City's medical capabilities, cancer shouldn't be a problem, but regular medical methods aren't working on him, and it could be because of his superpower. Apparently, Chairman Og is one of the heroes who stopped the rebellion in the past. In order to stop the growing cancer, he's been growing physically and has been searching for more stimulating food in order to withstand the pain of the cancer. While on a downward spiral, a genius scientist suddenly showed up with a treatment idea. He suggested they find a girl who matches at least 90% of the substance components in a vial, and he'll make the medication. Chairman Og used his power and influence to find the girl who matches, but he couldn't find a good match. But they eventually stumbled upon two girls from the streets who turned out to be a match. One of those girls will be drained of their blood and left to die. Rai can't believe her ears, but Razul adds that Chairman Og can also make a snack out of the girl since he even eats people these days. After answering her question, he tells her that it's his gift to her before her demise. Annoyed, Rai tells him they'll not let this happen and assures him they're going to ensure he doesn't harm Ramo or Hyunjong at all. This amuses Razul, but this gives Kim enough time to regenerate, and he tells Razul that he'll chop him up just like he did him if there's even a scratch on the girls. His continual resurrection annoys Razul, who moves in to slice him up with a card but notices his card gets lodged in Kim's jacket. Razul wonders how he was able to block the attack, but Kim tells him not to stop playing around with cards and rushes at him with a punch. Immediately, Razul deploys some cards to block this attack, but he still gets a face full of fist. The hit knocks the light out of his eyes and blood spurts out of his mouth. The force of the punch throws him back and shatters the wall he slams against. He wonders how one punch could be this strong. And he wonders how Kim's strength is still so high, even though his mask is breaking. Before he can get up, Kim jumps right over him and tries to stomp him, but Razul quickly jumps out of the way. Razul hangs on a wall and tells Kim to stop trying to scam him because it's going to be hard for him to win if Kim's regeneration rate is this efficient. What he doesn't realize is that Panda has activated her matter solidification technique, causing his hand to sink into the wall he's resting on. She buries his hand in the wall and tells him he can just decide to lose if he can't win. This amuses Razul, but Kim doesn't waste time and rushes at him again. Kim smashes into the building, but Razul forcefully breaks his own hand and climbs the building. He tells them he won't die here and asks them if he looks like someone who would die like an NPC. He tells them to pay attention and shows them a Joker card that's going to do God's work. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Hyunjong wakes up and tells everyone she loves them like she always does. She tells Hujin she loves him, but he replies nonchalantly. Surprised, Hyunjong looks him dead in the eye and asks if he doesn't love her, so he becomes tense and tells her he loves her. This makes her happy, so she hugs him. In the present, Roselle throws the Joker card at them, and it lands in their midst. For a moment nothing happens, and Panda becomes confused when nothing happens. When she looks back at the spot Razul was standing in, she realizes he's gone, and they realize they've been tricked. Moments later, Barry sees Razul without one of his hands while being treated by hot nurses who feed him grapes. Barry demands to know what on earth he's doing, and Razul jokes that there's nothing wrong with hanging out with some ladies. Barry asks him about his arm, so Razul explains that a wall ate it up. He explains that the person he was sent after is not actually a red light mercenary, but a guardian of one of the kids they kidnapped. Surprised, Barry asks him if this guy made his arm like that, but Razul explains again that a wall ate his arm up. When Barry tells him to shut up, Razul asks why they even bothered someone as dangerous as this guy. He explains that this guy is a monster who basically has an immortal-like ability. Surprised, Barry realizes that this is the first time Razul, the best killer, has failed. As such, he believes they need to assume that this opponent is the strongest among the street people. Eventually, he decides to leave, and tells Razul that they'll talk later. Shortly after, one of the nurses offers Razul some cake. Instead of eating it, he brings it to the girls and asks if they want some of it. Suddenly, he hears Ramo shouting because one of the guards covered Hyunjong with a mask and is carrying her outside. The guard stopping Ramo pushes her to the ground and warns her to stay put if she doesn't want to get hurt. Hyunjong cries out to Ramo as she's carted away, so Ramo runs to Razul for help. She laments that she feels bad for the girl and that they can't let her go like that. She begs him to bring her back because she knows they're going to harm her. But Razul doesn't say anything. She soon falls to the ground and begs that he help her but doesn't get a reply from him. Meanwhile, Kim runs through the streets and destroys roads while rushing toward the giant food headquarters. Panda runs behind him, and when one of the drivers tries to see what just happened, Panda melts a part of his car door so she can borrow his car. She throws him on the ground while she, Rai, and Tanzai quickly get in. When they drive off, Rai asks why Kim is running like that, so Panda explains that he's angry because he feels like his kid is in danger. She explains that this was how he was when she first met him, and adds that it's a miracle he was so calm till now. Meanwhile, Kim keeps running with Hyunjong's name on his lips. In a flashback, the principal commends him for cold medicine for Soyeon. While they walk, Kim suddenly trips and falls. It turns out to be Hyunjong, who was begging by the roadside at the time. Kim asks her why she did that, but she laughs and begs him to give her a little of what's in the bag because she thought it was food. Kim explains that he doesn't have money, so he tries to give her whatever he has on him. However, the principal tells Hyunjong that they don't have anything on them right now and tells Kim to follow him. Confused, Kim asks the principal how he can just leave a little kid who came out of the streets to ask them for help. The principal tells him her parents probably ordered her to do so, and he tells him it's a common method these days. It surprises Kim that parents would ask their children to beg. So the principal replies that it's the slums, and people are more inclined to help kids, so they came up with that strategy. However, the principal agrees that this situation is problematic. Even if they gave the kids something, it would be quickly stolen by the animalistic people around her. The principal confesses that it bothers him a bit. Later that evening, a man calls Hyunjong a worthless B-word because her plate is empty, then slaps her. He asks her why she didn't bring anything in after being out for the whole day. And he curses at her and asks if it's hard for her to just beg. He grabs her head and pushes it into the ground to show her how to bow so that people will feel sorry for her and give her some crumbs. As blood pours out of her head, she tells her dad that she's sorry while still laughing, but the man tells her to stop messing up. He threatens to sell her off to the red light street if she disappoints him one more time, and Hyunjong agrees, still with that smile on her face. She reaches out to touch him and tells him she loves him, but the man gets disgusted and turns back. In anger, he wonders why she was even born. So he suggests they just die together since she's pissing him off so much. Suddenly, the man's face is smashed through the wooden wall by the principal, who says that he finds it hard to believe that an angel like this was born from a devil like him. The principal lifts him off the ground and reminds him that it's mandatory for a parent to take care of their children and help them grow while staying by their side. It hurts the principal so much that tears start to fall from his eyes, and he tells the man parents don't look down on their children and order them around like he does. To give him a taste of his own medicine, the principal gives him a good beating. Concerning Hyunjong's secret, it's a known fact that babies cry when born. To receive love, they also instinctively know how to smile. And that's why Hyunjong is always smiling. She smiles when she's having fun, when she's happy, when she's hurting, and when she's suffering. The principal beats up Hyunjong's father to a pulp until the man starts to plead for mercy. The man begs him to stop, but the principal continues punching him until his hand is bloody. He tells the man that if he didn't come, he would never stop what he was doing. Suddenly, Hyunjong grabs the principal and begs him not to hurt her dad. Immediately, the principal promises not to lay a hand on her father again on one condition. Shortly after, the principal takes Hyunjong with him. While they're walking, Kim tells the principal that he understands why he chose to do this, but he asks if it's really okay to separate children from their parents. The principal replies that there's no direct answer to that, but he promises to at least do whatever he can to make sure this child doesn't regret coming with them. Even though they're not blood-related, he believes they're family if their hearts care for each other. In the present, Chairman Og and Barry welcome Professor Nogel. The professor asks Chairman Og if he's been doing well, but Og replies that he's as tired as usual. However, the doctor assures him that today marks the end of that and he can soon return to being the city's hero. Nogel turns to Hyunjong and tells her it's been a while since he's seen her too. Nearby, Hyunjong sits with a smile on her face and greets the doctor. The doctor pats her head and notes that she seems to be in great shape because of her bright smile. Immediately, he tells her she'll serve as a good medical ingredient. Moments later, Barry asks Professor Nogel to speed up the procedure. The professor opens his briefcase and proceeds to give Hyunjong a shot. Once they're done, he tells them that they're finished and Barry is surprised that it happened so quickly. He asks if that's all, and Nogel replies that Hyunjong is now a medical ingredient. He explains that she must be consumed within 30 minutes after breakfast and again within 30 minutes after dinner. He adds that the chairman can have around half of her after breakfast and the other half after dinner. Even though he could drain her blood to make the medication into liquid, that would take some time. Also, since Chairman Og has a taste for human flesh, he felt this would be a better method. Excited, the chairman asks if he can eat the girl immediately since he's already had breakfast recently. However, Nogel explains that he'd have to wait for at least 10 minutes for the injection to take effect. He sets a timer for 10 minutes, so Og decides to wait. Suddenly, they hear someone shout Og's name, and the person tells him to come out immediately. Barry wonders who on earth is shouting, so he radios the guards to know what's going on. One of the guards tells him that some monster is destroying things in the lobby, and Barry is surprised to hear the voice came all the way from there. Kim's voice suddenly sounds again to tell Hyunjong he's here, and she smiles when she recognizes him. She screams out to let him know she's on the top floor, and Kim picks her voice from the radio. Barry immediately tells him they have his kid, so Kim tells Hyunjong he's coming to get her. Amused, Barry tells him he's looking down on their big company because he has to make an appointment to meet them. But Kim tells him he sounds like an imbecile, just like Chairman Heel. This statement annoys Chairman Hai, so he tells Barry to tell the guy to come here. Barry tries to protest, but the chairman insists that Heel gave him strength when he was suffering from cancer, so he must avenge him personally. He asks Barry if he's underestimating him, so Barry has no choice but to agree. Eventually, Barry tells Kim to enter the elevator in front of him, but he warns him that he's going to meet all their forces on his way up and he may not make it to them. He assures him that he'll get to meet Chairman Og and his kid if he can make it up there. Barry tells him he hopes his skills are enough, but Kim doesn't listen and enters the elevator. When he reaches the 4th floor, several men rush at him with swords, demanding to know how he can have the balls to defy this nation's hero. They stab him, but they end up being the ones who bleed. Shortly after, Kim gets to the 5th floor. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Soyeon trembles because of a thunderstorm. Hyunjong asks her if she's scared of thunder, so Soyeon explains that she is, and that teacher Kim isn't here to read her a book like he usually does. Hyunjong offers to read to her, but when she picks up the book, she realizes she can't read. While going through the halls, the principal overhears someone reading a story. When he peeks in, he finds Maru reading a story to the rest of the kids, and that makes him laugh. Sometime later, Kim reaches the 52nd floor, and Barry wonders how this is happening and why the elevator just keeps moving up. He radios the guards and asks how they can dare call themselves workers of giant food with terrible skills like this. Meanwhile, on the 59th floor, the chairman of the Special Guard Force assures him that they'll stop Kim at the 59th floor. The chairman tells his team of superhumans to attack Kim with full force the moment the door opens because he'll reach Og if they can't stop him on this floor. The 59th floor is the last floor before the one Chairman Og stays in. The skilled and powerful guards waiting on the 59th floor are confident they'll be able to stop this guy. But the man who later shows up in front of them is far beyond their expectations. His body glows with the red shine of the blood of the guards he had taken out, and his aura shows they'll also meet the same fate. The chairman of the special guards feels by instinct that they would lose even if they combined all their strength. Instead, the chairman lets him go to the next floor and tells Barry that they can't win. He explains that the opponent gave off such a fearful aura that it broke the spirits of men even willing to put their lives on the line. Annoyed, Barry smashes the radio. So Chairman Og points out that it must not have been a fluke that this guy was able to beat Gourmet Company. He decides that it is Kim's fate to battle him, and Kim soon shows up on the 60th floor. Instantly, Kim kicks the elevator door open and enters the floor to fight the chairman. However, while Kim is on his way to the 60th floor, Panda kicks butt in the other building to search for Ramo. Even though most of the guards rush to the building that Kim is in, she realizes there are still a lot of them here. Rice suspects that Ramo might be in the building they're in, and that the child Kim is looking for might also be there, so Panda suggests that they can save both of them. Suddenly, a guy with a weird voice shows up and asks them why they're causing trouble. He greets the intruders and asks if they also brush their teeth 3 times a day. Apparently, this guy is named Tong, and he's Giant Food's third in command. He adds that brushing one's teeth is important and advises them not to skip it because of laziness. Rai wonders what on earth he's saying and asks why he doesn't just speak after they're done brushing. Immediately, Tansai recognizes Tong, so Rai asks if the guy is strong. Tai-san believes he most likely is because Tong is like Chairman Og's left-hand man. Eventually, Tong asks Tansai why he's here instead of doing his job, but Tansai is surprised he remembers him since they've only met once or twice during the city ceremony. Tong replies that he doesn't know his name but never forgets faces, especially because managing customers is important in the food industry. Tong mentions his senior, Baekwai, and points out that Tansai is the psychopath's subordinate. Shocked, Tansai walks over to Tong, much to the lady's surprise, and tells him that these people are the criminals who killed Chairman Hyul of Gourmet Company. Shocked, Panda calls out to him and Rice screams that she knew he would do this. Panda asks if he's betraying his comrades, so Tansai tells them he's never thought of them as his comrades. He asks Tong to please arrest these criminals, and Tong says he seems to understand the situation now. Tong labels them as street people who are endangering Giant Food, and he activates his ability called Banquet within the mouth to take care of them. His mouth enlarges and a long tongue comes out, which could be where he got his name. He uses an ability called Canine Teeth Skewer to shoot a destructive tooth that pierces Panda's arm. Panda tries to pull out the tooth, so Tong tells her he was aiming for her head, but she dodged it. After that, he releases another attack called Front Teeth Knife, and the ladies jump out of the way to dodge it. Rai realizes he's using his teeth like weapons, but Panda warns her to be careful so she doesn't get hurt. Next up, Tong leaps into the air and releases giant teeth to crush them with a move called Molar Pounder. The ladies watch the teeth fall toward them, but Panda quickly uses her matter solidification skill to change the form of her hand and punch back at the teeth. The teeth immediately break apart, and Tong admits her ability is impressive. But he adds that his teeth immediately grow back once they're broken, so he has the advantage in a fight of endurance. Panda realizes it's just as she thought, she can't fight with force like Kim. Meanwhile, Kim spots Barry and Professor Nogle, whom he's seen before. He wonders if the fat guy wearing a flashy suit is Chairman Og, but Hyunjong calls out to her teacher and wonders why he looks so different. Professor Nogle mentions that there must have been another guardian at the school and that he must be the reason one of the trucks didn't return. However, Kim realizes they're using Hyunjong as a hostage, but he also remembers they can't harm her since they need her as an ingredient. Suddenly, Chairman Aug asks and confirms that there are just 2 minutes left for Hyunjong to be ready. So he tells them that this is all the time he needs to deal with this guy. Chairman Og rushes at him to avenge Hyal and tells Kim that he'll be the opening ceremony for his resurrection. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, the principal asks the newly brought in Hyunjong if she has a name. She suddenly starts to furiously look through her pocket. But when she finds nothing, she tells him she doesn't have any. Although she wasn't trying to be funny, this makes the principal laugh, and he decides to name her Hyunjong. Surprised, Hyunjong checks his hand and notices he's not holding this name he's talking about, so she asks him if he can give her the Hyunjong he's referring to. Amused, Kim tells her that a name isn't an item. In the present, Chairman Og rushes toward Kim, but Kim calls his name and tells him he's responsible for kidnapping children, so he won't forgive him. He assures him that he'll send him over to his beloved Hyal. With a single punch, Kim hits Og in the stomach and blows a huge hole right in his middle. The strength of the punch is so great that it shatters the glass walls on that floor. This shocks Professor Nogel that Og was taken out with one punch, and it's clear Chairman Og is dead. For a moment, Kim looks at his hand and then watches Og's body drop to the ground. Kim walks toward Hyunjong, but Barry stops him. Kim asks if he's still trying to stop him, so Barry points out that he doesn't look stronger than Chairman Og. He tells him he's still at this because the fight hasn't even started. He asks if he thought this was already over, and Kim notices that Og's blood has started to form together. Suddenly, Og's ability is activated and the blood turns into a noble blood vampire. Og admits that this is the first time he's fought with this form since the war, and he explains that he feels like he's waking up from a long sleep. He admits that Kim's punch was good, and he can't believe his human body exploded so easily. Kim quickly jumps at him to attack and blasts through the vampire's head with a punch. However, a blood hand forms out of the blood vampire and grabs Kim. Og tells him that this isn't his head just because it looks like it, and he tells him all the parts of his body are one blood flow that can move as if it has its own soul. Apart from that, he can also change his flow and density to grab him, but Kim won't be able to lay a hand on him. He crushes Kim with spikes of blood and tells him this is the reason he became blue blood, and the strength that keeps him at the top of the city. He calls Kim a street amateur and asks him if he now understands. Meanwhile, Barry deduces he was right to believe Chairman Og would win this battle. However, since this opponent could defeat Razul, he decides to take some extra precautions and radios the person closest to the isolation ward containing the children. He learns it's Razul, so he asks them to tell Razul to bring the other child to the chairman's room. Shortly after, one of the guards tells Razul to bring the kid, so Razul asks for a minute. He soon asks Ramo if she knows where Hyunjong was taken since she's smart, and Ramo admits that she does. Because of that, he tells her there's no reason for him to keep acting like he's friends with her, and he tells her he's been told to bring her to where Hyunjong was taken. When he asks her to follow him, Ramo tells him she has one last thing to ask him. She admits that this place was scary at first, and she didn't like how they were nice to her because they wanted something from her. But as time passed, she realized it wasn't that bad, and she became quite happy because of him and Hyunjong. She says it would have been better if they had met under different circumstances, so Razul asks her what it is she wants to ask. She asks him if he considers her a friend, and that shocks Razul. Eventually he smirks and admits that he doesn't at all. He explains that he's employed by the city, and he only took care of them because he was being paid to do that. He asks her if she was really that happy just because he was nice to her, and admits he didn't feel even a little affection toward them the whole time. He calls her an imbecile, and suddenly Razul's body is shocked by some energy. After he falls, he demands to know what she's done to him, but she tells him she's the one who eliminated Hyunjong. Confused, Razul asks her what she means by that, so Remo says she may have been able to save Hyunjong. She admits that she could have left this place if she wanted to, but she didn't because Hyunjong was here and she couldn't escape without her. Because of that, she chose the rational decision to be the one that would be chosen instead of Hyunjong. However, Hyunjong ended up being the one who was dragged away, and now her plan has been rendered useless. Remo tells Razul that she's a good-for-nothing and calculative kid. She tells him of an unwritten law among people with superpowers, which says that all superpowers are two-faced, so he has to be careful with whom he interacts with. Apparently, her ability has a very precise condition that must be fulfilled for it to work, and she activates the ability called Morning of Repentance. Apparently, when someone lies to her, a bell rings in their heart, and if that bell rings over 100 times, she can control that person. So for someone like him who makes a living through lying to others, she knew this condition would soon be fulfilled. She also thanks him for lying to her just now, when he said he never cared about them. Meanwhile, the guard outside realizes Razul is taking too long, so he considers going in to check on him. He opens the door to ask him to hurry up, but the guy gets a card buried in his head. Shortly after, Razul walks out with the bird from Ramo's power on his shoulder, and with her by his side. In a flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, they decide to learn self-defense. Hajin offers to teach Hyunjong how to evade an enemy, and how to dodge an enemy's attack by observing his shoulders. He tells her to try it, but she just stands there until he hits the stick on her head. Surprised, he asks her why she doesn't dodge.
So she explains that her dad said not to dodge or block when he hits her. Another kid passing deduces that Hajin is bothering Hyunjong, so she slams her elbow into his stomach, but his shoulder-watching tips don't pay off this time. When the girl takes Hyunjong away, Hajin realizes he didn't see her punch coming. In the present, Kim, Hyunjong, and Chairman Og are in the higher building, but Ramo, Rozul, Panda, Tong, and Tansai are in the other one. In the higher building, Kim's body continues to heal from the attacks he receives.
Og applauds the fact that he's still alive, even though he's fighting against him. But Kim tells him he has a body that can't die even when he wants to. Confused, Og laughs and tells him he seems to misunderstand something. He asks him if he thinks he's immortal, then tells him that a certain person isn't someone who would give a mere human the gift of immortality. Kim wonders who he's talking about, so Og tells him he's referring to the person who gives everyone a superpower. Og admits that the person must have taken a liking to him because he gave him a very good superpower. Suddenly Kim's body starts to melt from within, and Og mentions that what he did it is starting to take effect. He informs him that he injected some of his blood into him when he grabbed him before. The pain makes Kim collapse to the ground as his body continues to melt. Og explains his blood functions like a digestive acid, and it could be because he likes eating so much. He tells Kim he'll probably melt to death first, no matter how good his regeneration is. Suddenly, Kim tears open his skin and pours out Og's blood from his body. He tells Og he's removed his blood, so Og admits he's tough and understands why he'd consider himself immortal. Annoyed, Kim wishes he could get another insta-freezer to throw this guy into since he's liquid. But he soon remembers Og is a hero of the war, and something so simple wouldn't work on him. It annoys him, but he admits to himself that there's no way to beat him right now. Suddenly, Nogel tells Og that the time has stopped for some time, so he can take his medicine whenever he wants. Og soon remembers and explains he forgot because his opponent was working so hard to fight back. Since the fight takes a while, Og reaches out to take the girl first before he continues. Before he can reach her, she disappears out of sight to their shock. It turns out to be Kim who had rushed in to carry her with him. Still surprised, Barry wonders how Kim could move at such ridiculous speeds because it was hard to see his movements. He doesn't think Kim was holding back before, so he believes it's probably his will to save the girl that grew so strong that he felt a rush of adrenaline in speed. However, this annoys Og, who claims that Kim has taken his medicine. Kim realizes that revenge isn't important right now, and he needs to get Hyunjong to a safe place for now. He wonders where he can put her, and quickly spots a door that leads to stairs. Immediately, he heads for the stairs and breaks through the door. Once inside, he looks down and figures out that the stairs should lead them to the first floor. Behind him, Og rushes toward him so he doesn't get away. Kim quickly drops Hyunjong and tells her to move ahead while he stays there to buy some time. He assures her she can do this because she's strong. So she watches him until he jumps back to face Og. He pretends to try to punch him but stumps on the ground and breaks it, so they both fall into the lower floor. Barry rushes to help the chairman, while Nogo remains amused because of how much bigger the scale of the fight is getting. Since he has nothing to do here, he decides to take his leave and wishes them good luck. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Special Forces hears the fierce fight going on upstairs and confirms that they wouldn't have been able to take that guy on. However, he's surprised that the guy is able to fight against Chairman Og for this long. Suddenly, the chairman and Kim fall through the roof, so the men run away to avoid getting crushed by the ceiling. After the collapse, Og promises to destroy Kim for stealing his medicine and for destroying his building. Meanwhile, Kim decides to destroy this building, to bury Og under all the rubble temporarily, since he can't damage him. He throws a pillar through his head to buy more time, and continues by breaking the ground underneath them again. Eventually, Og becomes angry that he's been pushed around by a mere street thug. He believes this fight would have been over a long time ago if he had taken his medicine and healed to his full capacity. He quickly tells Barry to change their defense plan and tells him to release the blood. Barry receives the instruction, and Kim wonders what this fool who keeps watching them without engaging in a fight is going to do. Suddenly, Barry activates his ability called the World Within his pockets and opens his jacket. This ability allows him to store any object in his pocket with the condition of a daily limit. At the chairman's orders, Barry has been storing a bit of Og's blood every day. The amount he's stored up so far is equivalent to the size of a tsunami. Since the source of a vampire's power is blood, the blood that was being stored to be used after Chairman Og's full recovery is what is being released now. With this, Og will be able to use the power he had in his prime years. Meanwhile, Hyunjong makes her way down the flight of stairs. Suddenly she slips and falls downwards to the end of a staircase. Her body becomes bruised, and she gets a nosebleed, but she manages to get back up. However, she begins to tremble when she gets up and suddenly collapses again. While on the ground, she remembers how Teacher Kim told her she's strong, so she reminds herself that she is. Because of that, she gets back up and continues walking. On the other hand, people usually refer to animals when referencing strength. For example, they refer to a body tougher than a bear, a speed faster than a horse, or a grip sturdier than an alligator's teeth. No matter how strong humans are, they're nothing when compared to the power of the force of nature. Kim struggles as he's overwhelmed by the force of Og's blood. He tries to fight his way out of it, but he's soon overwhelmed by the flow while Og laughs maniacally. Og tells him that even his superpower can't defeat the sea, and Kim is soon swallowed up in the sea of blood. When he starts to choke, Og tells him to give up and accept his end. The light soon goes out in Kim's eyes and his body starts to melt. Og tells him it's over, but he suddenly feels a strong pang in his heart. Og realizes he's in trouble because he's getting more pushback than expected from using his superpower. He decides that he needs to get his medicine immediately, so he extends his blood into the staircase to find Hyunjong. Once inside, he starts to sense the little girl's blood and he soon spots her in one of the staircases. When Hyunjong sees him, it's too late, because he lunges towards her to catch her. Meanwhile, Kim realizes that Hyunjong is in danger, and he realizes he can't save her because his body is almost entirely disintegrated. He admits that he's not strong enough to defeat Blue Blood on his own. Suddenly, he hears a voice tell him he has to go back because he promised to protect the kids. He sees a man wearing the red mask, reminding him that he promised the principal, and he also promised Soyeon to come back. Surprised, Kim asks him who he is, so the person tells him that he's the author who guides the stories of those who bear this mask. The person explains that this mask can elevate your emotional state, but can also sometimes keep a person from coming to terms with their true emotions. However, he explains that this line can become blurred as Kim's emotions become more and more aggravated. He adds that the fact that he can't remove this mask is proof that he hasn't been true to his emotions. He asks him if he's not angry and if he doesn't care about what happens to the girl, so he asks Kim to let his true emotions burst out. As Og is about to grab the girl, his insides suddenly explode and Kim is released. With eyes full of rage, Kim appears without his mask and declares that he won't lose another one of his children. This annoys Og, who asks him how much stronger he can possibly get. Og knows superpowers aren't like muscles, and as such, using it a lot doesn't make the superpower stronger, but only makes the user more efficient. Although he can increase his strength by taking in more blood, he knows others can't become stronger just by a change of heart, and he wonders who the heck this guy is. Regardless, he tells Kim it doesn't matter if he's gained more strength because he can't stand the power of the sea of his blood. Og determines to consume both Kim and the child, but Kim leaps up and tells him all he needs to do is land one punch. Kim's punches develop into several in one, and Og's body starts to tear apart in various points. He wonders how his body is getting blown up without Kim even touching him. Then he realizes that Kim is using his fists to create wind pressure strong enough to lift him up. Kim pushes upward, and the force of his power pushes Og up until the blood spills out of the top of the building. Eventually, Kim tears through Og's body, which annoys him. Suddenly, Kim notices something coming out of Og's body. Meanwhile, Barry is blown away by the force of the blood, and he finds himself somewhere else. When he looks outside, he realizes that he was thrown all the way to the other building, and he can't believe Kim is able to do this to the chairman. The display of this guy's strength reminds him of another hero named Van Deel of the Titan Hand. If this person is as strong as Van Deel, then that would mean Og is in danger, and he'd have to help him out quickly. However, he wonders if he can really do anything against such an opponent, but suddenly hears a nearby guard scream in pain. Barry realizes there must be enemies in this building too, and he wonders who. As he's about to bring out a weapon, Razul appears and tells him he's the one. Surprised, Barry calms down and asks Razul what happened. So Razul explains that he had to take the guy down because he was a street person disguised as one of them. He asks Barry why he's here and not in the other building, since he was bringing the girl to him. So Barry confesses that the opponent threw him all the way here. Razul jokes about the sound of his crash, then asks if Chairman Og is safe, so Barry tells him that Og is in danger and confesses that it's a good thing they ran into each other. Barry explains that they have to keep this girl hostage so they can buy some time, then Barry asks the girl to follow him. Immediately, Razul throws a card at Barry's head, which shocks him. Somehow, Barry manages to catch the card and he asks him what's going on because he hates surprises. Razul is surprised he caught the card, so Barry tells him he didn't expect him to betray them for no reason. Barry asks if the street people bribed him, but Razul tells him there's another reason. Barry doesn't believe anything can be more important than money to Razul, so he offers to pay him double of whatever the street people offered him. However, Razul attacks him with some other cards and tells him there's another reason. Barry blocks these attacks too and tells Razul that he liked that they could make use of him as long as they paid him well, even though he was from the streets. Annoyed, Barry tells him this is greatly disappointing, then brings out some guns. However, Razul jokes that he doesn't really care if guys like him anyway and dashes towards him with another card. When he launches a few more cards, Barry starts firing. Suddenly, Razul directs some of the cards to attack Barry from the side, but he's good with guns and is able to fire them down. After that, Barry drops the pistols, then charges at Razul with a sword and another pistol. He tells Razul he's the best killer and he's fit to even rival him. But he keeps cutting through Razul's cards as he closes in on him. When he gets close, he fires more shots that Razul blocks, so he jumps over Razul's head and almost stabs his head with the sword. Before he can do that, Razul blocks with his card, but Barry kicks one of his legs. That makes Razul stumble, so Barry tells him that he's currently weaker than he is, since he's lost an arm. Meanwhile, Kim notices the thing that came out of Og's body and guesses that it must be the source of the blood. When he recalls that Og had told him that the one that gives power never gives out immortality and omnipotence, he decides that this thing must be Og's weakness. Immediately he jumps towards it, but Og quickly covers it up with spikes before he can get closer. Regardless, Kim breaks through the spikes and lands a punch at what appears to be his heart. The attack makes Og scream and his blood spills around. Around the building, workers run away so as not to be hit by the rubble when they realize the building is falling apart. Kim soon lands back on the roof and finds a portion of Og's heart there. He notices this part of his heart didn't explode, which intrigues him. Og's form appears out of the clump, then he asks Kim to stop and admits defeat. Kim asks him what that clump was that came out of his body, so Og tells him it's the cancer that's plaguing his body. He explains that it's a side effect that came from overusing his superpower during the war. Even when he turns into his blood vampire form, the cancer doesn't disappear and has grown over time to become this big. Kim notices that he seemed to be in pain when he hit it, so Og explains that the cells that form this tumor are part of his own cells. When this tumor experiences danger, it absorbs his blood to protect itself. Just now, it absorbed and used most of his blood to protect itself from the punch. Og admits that he's been acting like a child recently because of his illness and promises Kim that he won't bother his children again. He begs him to have mercy on him because he's lost. But Kim remembers how he almost eliminated Hyunjong and tells him he's already crossed too many lines. He tells him he should have never laid hands on his children to begin with. Og promises to give him whatever he wants if he spares his life and offers him money and fame. But Kim tells him that he doesn't need it. He jumps towards Og to finish him and assures him he can get whatever he needs with his fist. With one punch he smashes into Og's body, and Og fades away in painful agony. Meanwhile, Razul hides behind a wall while Barry shoots at him. Barry tells him to surrender and come out because he can't defeat him. He tells him he knows all his tricks, but he can't know all the things he's stored up. When Razul sees Barry has dropped a grenade by his side, he jumps out of the way but gets knocked down by the explosion. Barry closes in on him and explains that his heart card chases his opponent, the club deflects attacks, and the spade cards are for slicing. When Razul directs a diamond card at him, Barry tells him he knows that he uses the diamond card to restrain his opponents when he's in danger. However, Barry quickly blocks the attack with his shield. When Razul sends a joker card next, Barry catches it and says he uses his joker card, which has no ability, as a decoy to distract his opponent. Suddenly, Razul starts to cough out blood, and he realizes he's not recovered from his last fight. When Barry closes in on him, he asks him if he has any last words as a courtesy because of the respect he has for him. Razul mumbles something inaudible, and when Barry asks him what he's saying, Razul smiles and tells him that everything he told him about the abilities of the cards is a lie. Apparently, every card can be used for every kind of ability. Suddenly, the cards Barry blocked come flying towards him, and Barry starts firing again. However, the bullets are deflected off them. Annoyed, Barry opens his jacket and activates his ability to take them all in. However, he suddenly notices that his body can't move, and he notices a card beneath his feet. He wonders when Razul slipped the card under his feet, so Razul reminds Barry that he's the best assassin he knows. Annoyed, Barry screams out his name, but he's soon stabbed by the cards coming at him. Barry falls to the ground in a pool of his blood, and he wonders how Razul could have kept so many secrets from him, even though they spent so much time together. Razul admits that he wouldn't waste his time telling his secrets to a grown man with a beard. He eventually tells Barry he wasn't completely wrong because each card suit does have a designated ability. But he can switch their abilities every 10 seconds. And he lied about that. Barry calls him a bastard but admits that he always liked that about him. Razul walks away and tells Barry that he hopes he's born as a curvy, beautiful woman in his next life. When Razul shows up, Ramo commends his good work, so he asks her if she was just hiding the whole time. She admits that she's weak and would have gotten in his way if she did anything. She also tells him she knew that he'd win. That makes Razul blush, because compliments from girls are the best, but Ramo wonders what's wrong with him. When Razul asks her to help him out because he's hurt, she tells him she won't because of what he just said. Suddenly, Rai enters and finds Ramo. The sisters run towards each other in excitement, but Rai jumps to kick Razul in the face instead of hugging Ramo. She quickly drags Ramo away and asks her why she's hanging around with such a dangerous bastard. Ramo tells her sister it's okay because Rosal isn't such a bad person even though he looks like a pervert. Rai tells her that he tried to unalive her, and when Ramo asks, Rosal admits that he doesn't have any excuse for that. Eventually, Ramo tells Rai that she used her ability on Razul, so he's an ally now. Suddenly, Panda asks Razul how he's able to eliminate people since the purple collar around his neck is supposed to prevent that. Razul says the collar is probably malfunctioning, but admits that he likes that. Panda realizes that Ramo's ability must have caused this, which means it's beyond simple brainwashing, but it's more like the person will carry out whatever she desires. She realizes this ability is top class and might be one of the best in the world. She realizes why Handsome considers these two girls important. Since they're all reunited, Razul suggests they all get out of here and suggests they go get Hyunjong if she's still alive and escape discreetly. He points out that there is a dangerous guy named Tong here, so Rai mentions that Teacher Panda already took care of Tong. That surprises Razul because she was weaker than Tong when he fought her, so he wonders if she has some kind of hidden ability. He also wonders if she also tends to hold back and not use 100% of her skills like he usually does. Suddenly, Tansai shows up and admits that he had a big role to play at the end of the fight when they were fighting with Tong. Panda agrees that Tansai helped a lot, so Ramo greets him and believes he's Panda's colleague. However, Rai tells Tansai to cut the crap and accuses him of turning on Tong near the end because he realized that Teacher Panda was winning. She calls him a filthy double-double crosser, but Tansai insists he was pretending to betray them as part of his bigger plan. Rai calls him a sad excuse of a human and claims he deserves to live out the rest of his life being controlled by Ramo's ability. So Tansai immediately apologizes for his actions even though he doesn't know what Ramo's ability is. Panda notices that cops are surrounding them and mentions that this is the reason she wanted them to be discreet. Meanwhile, Rizal is surprised that Panda is hiding from the cops because he thought she was one. Shortly after, Rai notes that the other building seems to have quieted down and she wonders if Kim was able to save Hyunjong. On the ground, the senior police from before learns that one of his subordinates caught a criminal. It turns out to be Kim, who had turned himself in because he killed Chairman Og. The others are shocked to see it, and they wonder why on earth Kim would turn himself in. In a flashback to a short while ago, the being in charge of the Red Mask tells Kim that he surpassed his expectations by defeating 2 Blue Bloods. When he points out that Kim won't be able to hide his presence in the city, Kim says it doesn't matter because this will serve as a warning to everyone else holding his children captive. The being tells Kim that he's a good person despite his methods being aggressive. Because they won't get a chance to meet again, he decides to give him a present, and informs him that 2 of his kids are imprisoned in the city's jail. That surprises Kim and he asks him how he knows that, so the guy tells him he's a spirit. Kim asks him to tell him where the other kids are, but the spirit tells him to take things slow because he'll find the other kids eventually. The spirit finds it odd that Kim didn't even make a remark about the fact that he said he's a spirit. The spirit points out that he's surrounded by the police, so he asks him to stay still just in case he can find a clue in jail. Shortly after, Xiaonzhang gets her bruises bandaged up by Ramo. Ramo assures her that her legs will heal soon if she doesn't push herself, and Tansai finds her bandaging skills quite good. Rai jokes that Ramo is good at everything except fistfighting, so Tansai retorts that she's better than her older sister who is good at nothing, so Rai contemplates taking his life. Eventually, Razul asks why the Red Mask guy left the kid here and got himself arrested. So Zipper guesses it might be so they can sneak Hyunjong out safely without drawing attention. Panda replies that she believes he must have gone there because he found the location of the other children. She knows he pays attention to the opinion of others but usually acts on his own when it comes to the subject of his children. Rizal replies that he'll probably be able to save the other children easily since Og is dead now, so he suggests they stay out of it since they've done their part. Suddenly, he asks Panda if she has a boyfriend, which surprises the girls. Ramo uses her powers to make him choke himself, which pleases Rai. Eventually, Panda replies that she knows Kim shouldn't have a problem saving the kids, but she can't just let him handle everything since they're friends. After Ramo lets him go, Rizal asks Panda when people from the slum street and the fashion street got so close. He informs her of the unwritten rule of considering Blue Moon City, the next street, and even one street member's enemies to survive. He adds that Kim was also convicted to the highest degree, so he'll be sent to Crimson Prison, which has the city's toughest security, which means they can't help him. Suddenly, they hear a news report about how Kim has been transferred to the National Police Agency. The reporter mentions that the sad news of Chairman Og's death has caused many citizens to gather together in their grief. Outside the crime scene, the people throw things at Kim, curse him, and call him names. Moments later, he is interrogated by an agent who becomes angry that Kim won't tell him his name or even the name of his accomplice. The agent reminds Kim that he's not a citizen and he's at the risk of remaining in here with him forever. He asks Kim why he won't work with him since he turned himself in, then finally asks him if he's from the streets. Kim doesn't answer because of the ongoing war between the city and the streets. Eventually, the agent tells him he doesn't think he acted alone because Chairman Og can't be defeated by one person. Suddenly, Kim stands up and offers to show him how he eliminated him, which startles the man. Shocked, the man stops the operation and teleports out of there. Outside the interrogation room, the investigation team leader named Naspul tells the agent he realizes that the detained person is a dangerous person and is hard to control, so he decides that they'll end the investigation here. When the agent materializes, his subordinate jokes that he survived because of his ability to teleport, but the agent tells him to show some respect. Shortly after, Kim is told that the military will be mobilized if he does anything rash inside the room, so he's told to act properly. Meanwhile, Kim wonders why the guy got so sensitive when he was just trying to scare him a little for looking down on him. Moments later, Detective Aston runs into Nashpool telling his men that the direction of this investigation will depend on whether their detainee identifies himself as a street person or not. Aston soon greets him and asks about the investigation. Nashpool responds that the guy isn't cooperating, and explains that even threatening didn't yield anything. Ashton realizes he probably doesn't get scared easily, and Naspul reveals that his instincts tell him that this guy believes that it'll be okay no matter what happens. It's clear he's not a regular person since he was able to eliminate Chairman Og. He admits that he got goosebumps seeing the guy since he kind of reminded him of the dreaded Bekwa. When the other detectives hear that, they cringe and ask him not to mention that cursed name. Eventually, Aston asks if he can talk to the guy, so Naspul tells him to knock himself out. Moments later, Aston enters the interrogation room and greets Kim. Kim doesn't say a word, so Aston tells him he doesn't have to put his guard up because he isn't here to interrogate him. He introduces himself to Kim and adds that he's a detective striving to maintain peace within Blue Moon City. After that, he informs him that he'll be transferred to Crimson Prison the next day, so this was his only chance to meet him. Aston tells him he's decided to look into his activities so far and asks him to correct him if he makes any errors. He also adds that he's turned off every camera so their discussion will not be recorded. He lists out that Kim had unalived Hyal before taking out Chairman Og since they were quite close. He adds that he also eliminated 2 people at the main gate, and he assumes that he's from the streets based on the way he destroyed the main gate. Furthermore, he adds that Kim's reason for doing that is that something important was stolen from him. Then he asks him if it's family. Finally, Kim breaks the handcuffs and asks him what he's getting at. In the present, Aston pleads with Kim to calm down because he's not trying to annoy him, and explains that he was asking so as to get his facts straight. Aston asks him if Chairman Og and Chairman Huel bothered his family, and Kim admits that they did. Eventually, Aston confesses that both chairmen have done great things for their city, but he's not personally fond of them because he knows about the terrible things they do behind the scenes. Aston asks him if he's found his family, so Kim replies that he's found only a fraction of them. Aston admits that he understands his motives, so he gets to the point of why he came. He tells him that he came because he wanted to help him, so Kim asks him why he'd do that since they don't know each other. Aston replies that it's because the enemy of his enemy is his friend, and he's certain something of benefit will come to him as well if Kim is successful with his plans. Apparently, what he and his boss are really after is to get rid of the corrupt companies in the city along with their dirty ways. Aston tells Kim he has no obligation to believe him, but he informs him that he'll be able to help him indirectly even though he can't help him directly. He adds that he may inform certain other people in their plan who need to be in the know, but Kim doesn't know if he can trust this guy even though he doesn't seem like a bad guy. Regardless, he decides that it doesn't make a big difference to him. Eventually, Aston stands up to leave, but asks Kim to promise him that he won't hurt innocent individuals who know nothing about this because they are also important family members to others. Before he leaves, Aston asks him if he also eliminated someone named Bekwa, then tells him he has a filthy mouth, but he's still a good person. Confused, Kim asks him who that is, so Aston explains that he always has a cigarette in his mouth and seems like someone who will throw fists before he even uses his mouth to speak. Kim says the guy is probably still alive even though he caved his head into the ground because he doesn't think it was enough to take his life. That intrigues Aston, so he takes his leave and wishes Kim some luck with finding his family and tells him to mind his head. Kim wonders what he means by minding his head. The news of Chairman Og's death spread quickly throughout the city, and this brought sadness to some. Particularly to Captain Van Dale, who promises to deliver divine vengeance to the man who wears the red mask. His men quickly try to calm him down and inform him that the guy has been arrested and will be transferred to Crimson Prison the next day. Some other guy standing nearby calls Kim a bastard and guesses that he must certainly be from the streets. Suddenly, someone throws a snack at the guy's head, so he shouts at her that he told her not to throw her food. However, the lady asked him if he would dare bring up the word streets in front of Maru, so she tells him he's an insensitive adult. Immediately, the guy tries to apologize to Maru, but when the lady tells him to bring a cake as an apology, he calls her a pig who craves for cake. They soon get into a heated argument which makes Maru sigh. Meanwhile, the news brought happiness to some. One of those people is Haran, who is excited at the feats of his savior. He tells his brother that he was right by saying Kim is a man who had a grander plan than they did, so Hokyu admits that he's surprised. Horan mentions that he's sure Kim is trying to send him a message with this action, but Hoka asks him if he's not reading too much into it. Regardless, Horan proposes they stop running and start preparing too. He suggests they use this opportunity to give those corporate boomers a whooping. To others, the news brought amusement, and one guy watching it calls Kim a real man. He finds it impressive that Kim doesn't stay hidden like he does but holds his head high in daylight. While he stands over the corpse of his recent victim, this guy admits that he wants to be like this and decides to let everyone at Red Light know about this fun news. However, he wonders if this red mask isn't too similar to the concept of someone named Uber. To some others, this news brought stress. In a certain office, paperwork flies around, and a woman laments that there's no God because God wouldn't let them hand over such a large piece of crap like this to her. Another lady refers to her as the head manager and asks what's wrong, so the head manager explains that the ancient committee members, who are losing their sight anyway, have no need to see these documents since they'll probably have a heart attack. The lady asks the manager how they're going to explain everything without these documents, so the manager decides that she'll just take them on because they're probably looking for a sandbag to beat up and relieve stress. The manager tells the lady she's free to go home and goes in to meet her fate, while the lady worries about their poor head manager. When the manager enters the room where the important men are gathered, she immediately starts to hear complaints about why the mayor isn't here when their city is in a state of emergency, and how everyone is irresponsible. They complain about a gatekeeper who abandoned their post, which they wouldn't do back in their days, and one person speculates there must be a traitor among them. One of the men asks why the food tastes so bad, so another replies that the quality has gone down since giant food is gone. The head manager remains speechless, so the man who just spoke about giant food asks the head manager if the situation of things doesn't require that they execute some people. Reluctantly, the head manager explains that their nation no longer does executions, but the man insists they need some scapegoats so crap like this doesn't happen again. This guy, who is Blue Moon City's operations director, insists that the citizens are in uproar. The head manager replies that they can't cry over spilt milk and suggests they just let time heal the wound. Another man suddenly complains that people are living too comfortably these days, so their heads are full of useless ideas. He laments that they can lock the criminal up in prison, but he'll probably end up living longer than they will. To appease him, the head manager explains that it's impossible to get out of Crimson Prison, especially since it's isolated from the rest of society. Suddenly, one of the men asks what she's saying, so she explains that they may be able to execute the criminal while in prison, even though they can't publicly execute him. The head of operations asks if she can ensure it's carried out properly, so the head manager offers to prepare photos of the dead man's corpse as evidence. One of the men tells her to take Kim's life painlessly, as this is the only mercy they'll grant him. The next day, the police begin transporting Kim in a crate, and give him the code Red 00. Nearby, Aston asks if they usually transport prisoners like this, so Nazpul tells him they don't. Apparently because he broke the handcuffs around his wrists, they have to use extra security to ensure he doesn't escape. Nazpul gloats over the fact that they're transporting him in a container that was custom-made for the prisoner by a company that specializes in such. Meanwhile, Aston hopes that Kim is able to find the rest of his family. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, the kids wear pajamas that the teacher has made for them during bedtime. Once in a while, a kid falls asleep before he is able to change. This time it's Hajin, and Soyeon tells him to change into his pajamas. Instead, he decides to sleep naked. In the present, Kim arrives in Crimson Prison late at night. He's met by the head manager who accuses him of being the shithead responsible for all her headaches at work. Kim is chained to a contraption, and the head manager asks why he's allowed to wear a mask since criminals aren't allowed to. The guard close to her explains that they've been unable to get it off him, so she tells them to leave it. Meanwhile, Kim wonders if this is really a prison, especially because he can't find any other prisoners in the cells. He finds this woman suspicious too, and she soon tells him that trapping him here in this prison has taken something off her plate. She laments about how those stupid boomers always boss her around and wonders if she should just eliminate all those old men. The guard beside her pleads with her to exercise restraint because she can't mess with them just yet. The head manager agrees and admits she was just talking shit. Suddenly, the floor they're standing on goes into the ground and Kim realizes it's acting like an elevator. Eventually, the head manager tells them they're about to forget about the annoying outside world and have some fun. She suddenly takes off her clothes and excitedly states that she's about to enter her own world. They go down into a dark place where people chant the name Lucy. Suddenly, another woman appears on an underground stage and welcomes the head manager, whom she refers to as Lucy. Nearby, another man starts to play the violin, and some puppet spoons show up to give Lucy a welcome display. They're soon put in the limelight, and Lucy appears to receive the praise of the crowd with Kim and the guard behind her. Lucy thanks the crowd for their patience and asks them if they've been enjoying Lucyland so far. All their excitement touches her, so she asks them to scream if they're enjoying it, and droves of people wearing masks and holding lights scream in response. Kim wonders what on earth is going on, and realizes this lady is more messed up than Hill. Lucy explains that Lucy Land is a place full of happiness and fun, but a brief interruption is soon made to inform everyone to put on their masks because only Lucy and the disgraceful criminal are allowed to show their bare faces. For their verified visitors who were allowed admission into Lucyland, they have games that include roulette, blackjack, poker, and several others, with free room and lodging included. After that, the ads come up, and they're told that they must place their bets on a token if they want to gamble. Apparently, each living criminal is referred to as a token, and the minimum bet is $100,000 per token. One of the prisoners begs for help while the guard points a gun at his head. But the guard just explains that they won't be held responsible for any lost, broken, or disqualified tokens. They're also told the requirements and price to place bets can change at their discretion, with no refunds provided. The game soon starts, and a wheel is turned, which eventually lands on the number 21. One of the prisoners is relieved that he's safe while the guy next to him screams in horror. Immediately, the guard opens fire on the guy who screamed and wastes him. When that's done, the visitors are told that they don't reuse tokens, and that what happens in Lucyland must stay in Lucyland. Apart from that, the winner, who has the winning number, gets an immediate cash prize. Lucy tells them not to worry that people are being eliminated because all the criminals used as tokens are either street people or criminals who have committed acts of sin. She soon approaches Kim and notes that he won't be unalived so easily. She decides to make him her greatest showpiece since she's the one who eliminated Chairman Og. She climbs on him and confesses that she's getting excited just thinking about it. Suddenly, Kim tells her he has a question, so she asks him what kind of question. Suddenly, a puppet appears to give her answers to possible questions, which include the fact that she likes women more than men she has no intention of letting him live, and her favorite food being pasta. Kim asks her if there was a child among any of the tokens used recently, and threatens something if there was. But Lucy immediately tells him there wasn't a child, and stops him from asking questions. Kim is confused, so Lucy tells him talking to her is a privilege and the others there chime in to tell him to shut up. After that she tells him goodbye and Kim is dragged into a deeper level of the underground bunker. Meanwhile, in the Lucyland basement area, two guards notice it's getting noisy above and figure that they'll probably start slaughtering criminals again, which is fun. One of the guards tells the criminals working there to keep coming if they don't also want to become tokens. The men work in the mines and Hajin does some digging nearby. He complains that these foolish men won't even let them take breaks, so he asks an old man next to him if prisons are always this messy. The old man tells him they didn't used to be, and explains that Crimson Prison used to be a labor house that captured rebels were sent to. In the past, it functioned like other labor houses, but after Hazel became the manager, everything changed. Apparently, this place is now a labor house and prison in name, but she's made this top secret by law, so no one can investigate. She can also capture people at the request of her friends, or if she simply doesn't like the person. Crimson Prison's warden is Hazel, but her real name is Lucy. She's a blue blood who secretly runs this perverse casino. Apparently, she's the granddaughter of a dead blue blood named Lucard, but she hid her true identity and was able to become a warden. The man explains that he was captured because he ran a competing business in the same industry as Lucard. Even though Lucard was more successful than he was, Lucy put him here regardless. The man explains that he doesn't know how a devil like Lucy shares the same blood with Lucard, who at least had some honor. The old man asks Hajin how he got here, and Hajin hesitates before he explains. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Hajin is seen to always be sleepy. He usually sleeps during class, meals, and even at night too. On a certain night, Kim goes to check on him and finds him sleeping. But he suddenly wakes up when Kim leaves. In a flashback, Hajin curses at the men who kidnapped them for shooting him with a tranquilizer while he wasn't looking. Another kid asks Maru if he knows why they kidnapped them, but Maru doesn't give any answer. Suddenly, a man tells the kid to be silent and immobile because the honorable blue bloods have arrived. In front of the kids, some important people take their seats. They include Barry, Vandale, Hyal, Nogel, Hazel, and a woman named W from a company called New Galaxy. Even though Hyal is the one hosting them, he realizes he's never seen such a large group of kids at once, and he worries that he might get in trouble for this. Meanwhile, Nogel tells Barry that Hyunjong is who they need. Vandale tells Lucy that it's been a while, but she tells him that she's Hazel right now. Van laughs because she has a strict disposition just like Lucard, and asks them where someone named Proton is. Van learns that Proton has already left with one of the children, and Hajin curses that the bastards took Miri. Annoyed, Hajin props himself up and runs toward the men, demanding to know where his family is. He's soon shot with a tranquilizer, and the man reminds him that he told him not to move. Immediately, Lucy tells the man to get out of her way and asks Yura her age. Yura replies that she's 12, and Lucy tells her she likes her because she's an unpolished gem. Lucy immediately carries her, but Yura tells her to let her go. Eventually Vandeel picks Maru, so W picks the kid with the fast legs. Since Hyunjong belongs to Chairman Og, Nogel picks the 2 other children who are left. After taking his pick, Vandeel commends Heel for doing a good job by boasting this. He all appreciates the praise, but admits that it's all thanks to Nogel and this fellow from an organization called Monkey Punch. Vandeel is intrigued by that and tells the man he's brave, but someone named Skull will kill him if he finds out. The man takes it as advice and promises to be careful. As Van heads out, Eel tells Barry to send his regards to Chairman Og, and Barry reluctantly agrees to. When they leave, Nogel asks Hyal if he and Barry are still awkward, so Hyal gloats that it's because Chairman Og likes him better even though Barry devotes his entire life to Og. Nogel points out that Barry is an employee while Heel is a friend, so he surmises that Barry is more emotional than he thought. When Nogel leaves, Heel bows and tells him to take care, but Nogel tells him he doesn't have to be so formal because he's been disqualified as a blue blood. However, Heel states that once one is blue blood, they're always a blue blood. Suddenly, Hazel returns, but this time as Lucy. Heel refers to Lucy as sweetheart, and Lucy tells Hajin to consider himself lucky because she has graciously chosen him. In the present, the old man in the mines finds it terrible that blue bloods now bit off children. When the man asks how Hajin is able to remember all that since he was tranquilized, Hajin explains that his ears don't sleep even when he does. The man eventually tells him that the citizens won't believe him, even if he were to tell them about the blue bloods. Apparently, blue bloods are considered the city's most honorable heroes, and the man admits he wouldn't have believed it if he wasn't held captive here too. The man talks about Yura, whom Hajin had also said is here. The man says Yura must be in a better place than them because Lucy likes young kids. Hajin finds that hard to believe because he's also here, so the man clarifies that Lucy likes young girls. Eventually, the man assures Hojin that he won't be used as a token as long as he keeps quiet and obeys orders. However, Hojin thinks about escaping once he can find Yura. Suddenly, the old man reminds him that he told him to keep quiet and follow orders, so Hojin wonders how he heard his thought and asks if he has superpowers. However, the man just clarifies that he's pretty old and knows what a kid is thinking. He adds that even the hardest criminals can't escape Lucy Land because the security of the prison is insane. The man explains that it's impossible unless he's unexplainably strong. Regardless, Hajin tells him to watch as he breaks Yura out of here. Meanwhile, Lucy receives some tea from a talking teapot. She becomes angry and tells the teapot to also give her lover some tea too, so the teapot starts to blush and confesses that she's shy because Lucy's lover is her type. Lucy admits that her lover is their ideal type, but she mentions that they need to be perfect. The teapot reluctantly agrees, then gives Yura some tea also while she's strung to some puppet strings. From Yura's eyes, it seems like life has been sucked out of her. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, the principal is suddenly stopped by someone. It turns out to be Hajin along with some dangerous-looking men, and Hajin asks him what he's holding in his territory. Hajin tells him to drop half of what he has as a toll fee, and the principal finds it amazing that a kid is leading these men. He finds that amazing but still whoops their behinds, and he names the boy Hajin. While the principal carries him away, Hajin wonders how this oldie is this strong. The principal tells the others that they've grown up and tells them to go earn an honest living by themselves. In the prison, Kim is asked if he has any last words. Kim finds the whole thing more like a show than a punishment, and he's approached by dolls on every side. Lucy soon appears with Yura on her leg. Then she reminds him that he's going to be the star of her biggest show. She explains that the audience are seriously craving to see the person who eliminated a famous blue blood hero. Lucy asks him to show them his beautiful screams of pain to satisfy their cravings, and the men around him soon open fire on him. Lucy remembers that her father always told her that one had to be perfect to lead the city as a blue blood. She remembers following her grandfather's teachings, and it felt like they controlled her every day in order to train her to be perfect. After some time, her grandfather Lucard passes away suddenly, and Lucy felt freedom for the first time. The life of freedom eventually became painful because she felt lost and meaningless because all the guideposts she's been following for life were suddenly gone. She didn't know where to go, what to do, or who to ask. All of a sudden, she realized that a controlled life is a perfect life. Because of that, she decided to split her identity into 2 people, Lucy and Hazel, who would serve to control each other. It was at that point she believed she became a perfect being. She believes blue bloods were just born into the right generation and got lucky. She believes W is a fanatic who believes in a ridiculous god, and the only person she can relate to is Hyal, since they were raised similarly. She considers herself different because she didn't ride on her grandfather's success, but got her success with her own skills. She considers it her destiny to lead the pitiful citizens and believes this was the perfection that her grandpa always longed for. Unexpectedly, someone appears before her that disrupts her perfect life. And that person is the person in the red mask. In the present, she wonders why Kim isn't dying after they've tried fire, electricity, bullets, bombs, and everything else on him. At this point, his body isn't even scratched, so she realizes there's a problem. Meanwhile, Yura spots the man in the mask and refers to him as someone called Redmond. Meanwhile, Kim realizes that bullets stopped penetrating him after his fight with Og. His body has gotten so strong that he doesn't even need to regenerate. Suddenly, he wonders why things have gone quiet and tells Lucy he's coming for her if she's run out of ways to eliminate him. With one punch, he breaks open the door of the place he's trapped in, and the puppets around Lucy lament that they're in a bind. Annoyed, Lucy tells them to go stop him, so they rush to do that. Kim wonders how dolls are supposed to stop him. So two skeletons who work as Lucyland Court Judge and Supreme Judge appear over Kim to tell him he must be punished for disrupting the order of Lucyland. The dolls all attack to protect Lucy, but Lucy snickers at that since she's just using them to buy time. She decides that it's time to use a special doll. Apparently, even after being warned by the mayor of the city, Professor Nogel continued human experimentations, some of which yield Woodcutter and his companion. Out of the biological weapons he created, Nogel considers the Black Series the best, and he gave it to Lucy because he has nowhere else to store it. Lucy decides to use her perfect doll's superpower on Nogel's experiment, so she can create perfection itself. Meanwhile, the judges and the other dolls have their behinds handed to them. Some of the guards make a run for it when they watch him take out all the dolls, and they realize he's really dangerous, especially since he could take out Chairman Og. Later, Kim goes to retrieve his clothes because he can't lose them after borrowing them. After putting them back on, he wonders how he can find Lucy. Suddenly, he's approached by the black monster who's seen wearing a gray mask. The black monster towers over Kim and our guy wonders what on earth this is. There's a television on the black monster's head, and Lucy shows through it and tells Kim that he's created a stain in her perfect life. She accuses him of freaking Lucyland beyond repair and tells him he's destroyed all her dolls. Angry, she accuses him of messing up her show and the order of Blue Moon City. While angry, Lucy clings to Yura and starts to cut her flesh with her fingernails. Suddenly, Kim spots Yura, but Lucy controls the black doll to take him out. The black doll slams its hand on Kim, releasing such huge power that it knocks down the guards that are trying to escape and wrecks things in the prison. After the smoke settles down, Kim tells her that he's already given her plenty of opportunities to eliminate him, but she's failed miserably even though she always talks of perfection. It shocks Lucy that he was able to survive that hit, so Kim shows her a proper hit, and his punch launches the black doll backwards through several walls until it breaks into the room where Lucy is keeping Yura. He's almost thrown off her throne by the energy, so Kim tells her that her beloved Lucyland will cease to exist. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Kim finds Yura walking around at night, so she tells him she can't fall asleep. Later, while they're chatting, she points to a certain direction and tells him that it leads to the slums. She asks him why no one comes to the school from there, so Kim tells her that there's a rumor that a monster lives around there, and that could be the reason. After a moment of silence, Yura tells him that's a weird rumor because there's no monster there, so they go have some tea. Meanwhile, a creepy monster walks around the forest looking like Bigfoot. In the present, a guy outside the prison yawns because of how boring his job is. He knows others are covering Chairman Og's funeral, but he can't believe that he's stuck here with the job of creating a documentary of the prison. Suddenly, a car rushes past him, and the guards on the wall open fire on the car. The bullets seem not to penetrate the car because of an energy shield around it, and the car somehow passes through the wall without breaking it. After they pass through, Panda and Razul rush into the prison, and she notices that something must be going on inside because there are a few guards outside. She tells Tanzai to take care of the entrance while they break in. Inside the car, Tensai sweats bullets, and he can't believe he's breaking into a prison as a policeman, and he considers himself a dead man. Inside the car, Rai, who seems to be the one generating the shield around the car, tells him to stop complaining, and they get into another argument. The only reason their car was able to barge into the prison door is because of Rai's ability, which is called Night Hunter's Claw. Any object she comes in contact with obtains mobility and destructive power that is strong just like a panther. However, the scope of her ability is limited to the exterior of the object, and the worst part is that she becomes extremely sleepy when she uses the power, so she's unable to use it for very long. She suddenly starts to drool, so Tanzai tells her to wake up so they don't end up dead. Meanwhile, the cameraman outside starts to record intently. Inside the prison mines, the prisoners wonder if there's an earthquake going on because of the tremors they're feeling. One of the guards scares them by shooting upwards and warns them to keep working, then threatens to make them tokens if they leave. Suddenly, the guard is hit in the back of the head by someone who turns out to be Yura. Surprised, Hajin calls out to her and she tells him that she's here to save him. When he notices she's hurt, he becomes angry and asks if Lucy did this to her. Suddenly, the guard stands up and curses at Hajin for daring to say the name of a blue blood. He tells Yura that she's being taken care of by Miss Lucy, so the guard starts firing and refuses to spare her. When he starts firing, Hujin corners Yura to block the bullets and he transforms into a wolf and slams the guy into the wall. After grabbing the man, Hujin calls him a pompous bastard and warns him to watch where he points his gun. Surprised, Yura worries about Hujin's body. So he tells her not to worry because it's just his superpowers. When he picks her up, he asks why she'd put herself in danger like this when she doesn't even have superpowers. But Yura reminds him that they're family and she wanted to help. As they are about to leave, the old man warns them that Lucyland is like a maze and they need to move carefully. But Yura informs him that there's no need to worry because the building has started to crumble since the Red Man and Lucy fought. She tells everyone to leave because this is their chance to escape. And the old man can't believe that the guy in the red mask is still alive. Meanwhile, Kim's hand is ripped off. Because Yura was unable to recognize him, she ran away to rescue Hujin. Kim had planned to take out Lucy first before following her, but two people showed up to fight him out of nowhere. Van Deel, who had ripped off his arm, is intrigued to see that his arm is regenerating again and is amused to find out that his clothes can regenerate too. The other guy that came with Van believes it's nothing to be surprised about because many deviants have regeneration ability. The guy tells Kim that he won't be able to regenerate in his next life, so he tells him to be careful. Kim asks them who they are and tells them to get out of his way, but Van explains that he had to intervene because Kim had tried to eliminate his colleague. Kim asks if he's a blue blood, so Van tells him he's Titan Hand's chairman, and the other guy introduces himself as Proton, Ice Chamber's chairman. Apparently, Nogel had informed them that he felt his experiment was destroyed, so they rushed here and saw this. Van admits that he usually doesn't like to intervene in other people's business, but this is different. He calls Kim a criminal who has disrupted the peace of their city and says he has to be punished immediately. Realizing he's outnumbered, Kim realizes he's in a bad spot and he hadn't been expecting this. Van points out that he's been enjoying until now because he's been having fun destroying people who are vital for the city. He clarifies that Hyal and Lucy aren't fighters and Og was at a disadvantage because he was sick. He tells him that they're not like those he fought before because they're experienced fighters and they're still in their prime. Van calls him a filthy criminal and tells him that he will purge him himself since he's the greatest among the Blue Bloods. He assures him that this will be his last battle. In another flashback to a day in the life of the Kim family, Hujin tells some men that they're on his mountain and asks them if they haven't heard the rumors. He threatens to tear off their legs and eat them to stop them from coming here, so the men beg to be spared and promise that they won't come again. Later that day, Hujin returns home and is certain that people will probably stop coming there for now, so he decides to go to sleep. Suddenly, he runs into Soyeon, who screams in horror. When Kim shows up, he asks her if she had another nightmare and comforts her while Hyunjong watches. In the present, Kim calls Van a bastard and tells him not to speak, as if he understands the situation. Van tells him he understands perfectly and adds that the children they took, even though through kidnapping, were given the opportunity to live a life with meaning. Kim points out that one of the kids was going to be used as medicine, while the other would be used as a doll, and that's nothing like a good opportunity. He tells Van that he calls himself a hero of the city, but he acts so depraved. Proton asks him if he considers himself righteous, especially since many innocent citizens of this city are suffering as a consequence of his actions. Proton tells him he's not some misunderstood hero, but Van tells Proton to stop with the lecture because he has no intention of returning Maru to Kim. He insists that he will raise and train the boy to become a man fit for the city. However, Kim rushes at him and tells him he'll get the kid back no matter what. Van asks him how the boy's life could amount to anything in the streets, but Kim tells him to shut up and closes in to punch him. Their punches collide, and a great deal of force is released that destroys the spot they're on. Proton notices the amount of power that's released, even considering the fact that their fists didn't touch. He knows it takes a great amount of power to be able to raise one's arm against Van's fists. He figures that this man's strength must equal Van's, and he realizes it's good the fight is happening here and not in the city because it would have been destroyed. Van acknowledges that Kim's strength is what gave him the edge over Og, but he promises to destroy his strength. Suddenly, Van multiplies his punches at once, but Kim blocks them. Meanwhile, the cameraman outside keeps covering the scene in front of him, and he's certain that their broadcast will be a hit. Suddenly, a huge explosion happens that knocks him to the ground. Out of nowhere, a huge hole appears in the ground. It turns out to be from the violent force of Kim's fight with Van. Van punches Kim, but he dodges it. Regardless, Kim realizes his opponent is strong because his skin got ripped off, even though he dodged the attack. He realizes he can't keep taking hits from this man even though his body is strong. Suddenly, Proton leaps in to join the fight and he tries to slash Kim with his ice sword, but our boy quickly dodges it. It amuses Proton that he dodged that, but he snaps his fingers and Kim is trapped in ice. While frozen, Argai realizes this isn't an ability he can dodge, and Proton tells him that he used his ability to create fridges and insta-freezers for their city. As Proton is about to slash the ice and attack him, Kim breaks through the ice with sheer force and diverts the slash that Proton sent his way with his hands. He pushes the slash up, shocking the reporter standing outside, who doesn't understand how the ground suddenly got slashed in half. Proton realizes Kim is talented and is adapting quickly even though he is clearly an inexperienced fighter. Suddenly, Van closes in on Kim and lands a punch. Kim quickly tries to punch it, but his arm explodes from the contact because his strength wasn't enough. As if that's not enough, Proton throws his ice spear into his back and pins him to a wall. After freezing his internals and broken hands, Proton tells him the ice inside him should slow down his regeneration. He tells Kim he won't be the first person with regenerative abilities he's met. Later, Proton realizes Kim is still healing pretty fast, so he suggests to Van that he start fighting with his superpower because it would be hard to eliminate their opponent using natural means. Kim is shocked to hear that Van wasn't fighting with superpowers, and Van agrees to activate his power. Immediately, Van calls out to a being named Vulcanus, and a thunderstorm appears in the sky. Meanwhile, lava suddenly pours into the mines, and they wonder why lava is coming out when they're not in a volcano. The old man tells them this is Van Deel's volcano's power, and adds that the mayor banned its use in the city since it's too dangerous. Above, Van tells Kim that his regeneration abilities can't beat his power no matter how fast or good it is. Van puts his hands into the lava and pulls out a fiery hammer out of the lava, then tells Kim that he will perish in the name of Vulcanus' righteous judgment. In the present, Panda runs through the area where Kim had destroyed Lucy's dolls. Suddenly, she runs into Hajin and screams because of his monstrous form. Hajin asks her who she is because she doesn't look like one of the guards, but Panda becomes confused when she sees the girl with him, and asks her if her name is Yura. In a flashback, Kim had drawn a picture of the kids for them. Panda tells him he's good at drawing, so he explains that he practiced a lot because he used to teach the kids art. Somewhere else, Lucy asks Van Deel to allow her finish Kim. He asks her if she has a way to eliminate him if he lets her, so she suggests using his hammer. Van tells her her hands will melt off just from touching it, so she tells him her doll can do it. She makes the doll control the hammer and calls Kim a piece of trash for making her feel like a failure. She tells him to disappear forever and rams the hammer into his back. The heat from the hammer pours heat into Kim's body and burns off his skin, causing him to scream in anguish, which pleases Lucy. Suddenly, her threads are cut, and her doll falls to the ground, to her surprise. When she looks around to see what happened, she sees a card, and Razul shows up to say that things would have been bad if he were a little late. Van asks him if he's a friend to this criminal, and Lucy identifies him as the assassin, Razul. Razul tells Lucy she's beautiful as ever, as expected of the prison warden, and explains that he's just a mercenary, and not Kim's friend. Suddenly Van realizes that Kim has disappeared while they were speaking. It turns out that Panda had pulled him through the wall using her matter solidification ability, and she's glad she did. She asks him if he's alive, and he struggles to ask her if she saved Ramo because all his skin has been burnt off. It surprises Panda that this was his first question, so she tells him they saved her, and Hyunjong thanks him. He tells her that that's a relief, so Panda pats his face and tells him that taking on 3 blue bloods is impossible even for him. She suggests they run away and get past the walls where folks from the city can't find them easily, so they can return to find the other kids. She reminds him that his goal was to find the kids and not to get revenge. However, Kim refuses because the kids could get in danger again if they don't fully take care of this. Because of that, he's going to get revenge and shows the city why they should never lay hands on his kids again. Panda finds that amusing, so she leaves him to completely regenerate while she bides some time. Kim tells her she has no reason to fight for the kids, so she tells him she's not fighting for the kids, but for him. He looks at her speechless and doesn't say anything. Meanwhile, Rizal laughs and realizes he's cooked because he's been able to get the attention of these big guys, but he doesn't know what to do now. Suddenly, Proton spots Panda stepping in and tells her she has returned to them, referring to her as whites. Panda finds it amusing that he recognized her immediately, unlike Shamin. So Proton tells her not to compare him to that young man because he recognizes his own underling. He mentions that her look and aura have changed, so she tells him she's a different person and goes by the name Panda now. Proton asks her if she's cutting ties with him by throwing away her past name, then prepares another ice spear. But she tells him the ties were already cut when she quit. Panda immediately tells Razul to handle Lucy while she handles the rest. Van notes that Proton knows Panda, but he asks him if he can get rid of her. Proton tells him to be careful because she's not strong, but he's never been able to defeat her. Proton immediately directs an ice attack at her, but Panda easily diverts his attack, which surprises Van. He doesn't know her ability, but he decides to get rid of her quickly so she doesn't cause problems later on. He dashes towards her with his hammer and gets in front of her in a moment, but Panda kicks him in the chest using her matter solidification ability. Van is surprised she reacted so quickly to his speed, but he soon figures that she must have been able to react because she was already expecting it. He figures that she must have good foresight, but it's useless since her kick was extremely weak. He brings down his hammer on her so Panda realizes she's cooked, but Kim launches a punch at Van out of nowhere. The punch sends the big guy flying, and Panda is surprised to see Kim because he hasn't fully recovered yet. However, he tells her it's okay. He notes that Lucy and Razul are evenly matched, so it's now a fair 2 versus 2 match on their side too. Suddenly, Van cries out in pain when he realizes that he's spilling blood for the first time. He promises Kim that he'll give him a painful death, but Kim tells him he was just about to say the same thing. Proton leaps in with his ice spear and launches it at Panda and freezes her on the spot. However, she melts the middle and walks out of them, reminding him that he knows that ice won't work on her. He agrees but generates an ice sword attack that he knows will be hard to handle. Panda jokes that he's mean, and Proton realizes she's intentionally standing near Van so she can restrict his attack range. Looking at his expression, Panda also realizes he's figured out her strategy. Meanwhile, Kim and Van keep fighting with all their might. Van swings at him with his hammer, but Panda kicks Kim's leg, forcing him to dodge the attack. After that, Kim punches Van in the chin, causing him to bleed again. Van becomes irritated that Kim could dodge his attack, but Proton realizes that Kim doesn't have the sense to dodge at that time. He knows he's strong, but stiff. But Panda is working with him to cover that flaw. Panda and Kim go at him again, hitting Van at once, and he bleeds out of his mouth. This annoys Van, so he pours out fire on them with his hammer. The fire burns everything in front of him, but Kim blocks the attack with his hands and only takes damage to his clothing. When the smoke clears up, he wonders how he was able to block such an attack without taking damage, and Van wonders the same. So Panda tells Kim that she uses her ability to increase his body's durability. Suddenly, Kim realizes he can't move his body. So Panda apologizes that she might have increased his durability so much that he's frozen solid. Van's face becomes completely sour, and Proton realizes that he's lived a life of constantly winning and practically led the war to victory. This is the first time he's getting an injury, and now he's losing the fight, and Proton guesses things are just as the same as when they first came to help Lucy. Meanwhile, Roswell teases Lucy by telling her she's lasting longer than he thought, and commends her strong fighting spirit. She tells him to shut up and calls him an armless imbecile. But Roswell playfully tells her she'll be the one who's headless soon. Proton realizes the situation isn't good right now, and Van is surprised when he drops to one knee due to weakness. Meanwhile, Kim thanks Panda for her ability because she can hit Van harder than he could before. Suddenly, Proton tells Van that he can't beat Kim alone, so they have to work together. Van finds that appalling, and repeats that he's the hero who defeated 10,000 enemies in the war on his own. He finds it insulting that Proton would say he can't defeat just 2 people, then raises his scorching hammer and declares that these 2 will be destroyed along with this place. As he releases the fire, Kim tells him to wait because Yura and Hujin are in this basement, but Vaughn doesn't listen. Suddenly, Hujin grabs Vaughn in his mouth, causing him to lose balance. Hujin recognizes him again and tells him he's dishing out revenge for kidnapping his family. Outside the prison, the getaway car keeps waiting, but fire suddenly bursts forth out of the ground from Van's hammer and knocks the car on its side. Kim is surprised at the appearance of the beast, and Van punches Hujin in the mouth, wondering where it came from. Van asks him how he dare get in his way and knocks him on his back. When the animal turns back into Hujin, Kim is shocked, and Van realizes he's seen this kid before. However, he doesn't realize he just punched one of Kim's children, so Kim rushes at him with great wrath in his eye for hurting the boy. Van realizes it's one of his kids and tells Kim he doesn't care because the boy is a criminal for getting in his way. Van swings his hammer at him, but Kim punches the hammer, causing a release of great energy. The energy breaks the hammerhead, but it burns Kim's torso and head off. Van is surprised at what has happened to his volcano's hammer, but Kim continues by punching him in the gut, causing the big guy to bleed. Kim admits that he won't pretend to be righteous as someone who has eliminated people, but he tells Van that if he's what's considered righteous in this society, he'd happily become the worst evil he's ever seen. With fierce anger, Kim punches Van and breaks through his armor, pushing his hands through into his back. This surprises Proton and Panda, but Kim tells Van he'd destroy the world again and again if it's filled with people like Van. The others turn to look in surprise, and Razul admits that he can't believe that he fought against a monster like Kim, and considers it a miracle that he only lost one arm in the fight. Suddenly Rosal notices Lucy's doll almost falls on him and realizes she's making a run for it. Proton realizes that Lucy is running away pathetically and wonders where she's running to in a crumbling building. He soon brings out a phone and makes a call to inform someone that they're done there. Proton tells the person that the Blue Bloods have lost. Meanwhile, the guy who helped Heel kidnap the kids gets summoned by his boss, the chairman of the Blue Blood Monkey Punch, Skull. Skull tells him to sit, and when he doesn't drink the tea at the table, Skull asks if he thinks he put poison into it. The guy fidgets but replies that he doesn't think so. So Skull asks him if he's having fun being secretly buddies with powerful figures. Confused, the guy asks Skull what he means, so Skull tells him he heard he kidnapped kids from beyond the wall. He tells him that he did what the mayor hates most, then asks if his head is filled with disgusting mush instead of a brain. Skull asks him why he'd do something so stupid, so the guy says he doesn't understand. Eventually, Skull asks him if the committee members are involved as well. Meanwhile, the members of the committee that gave Lucy the order meet again, and start to complain about the time they've been waiting for the Blue Bloods, who asked them to gather. Suddenly, someone tells them that the Blue Bloods won't be coming. The head of operations asks the two people who just entered who they are, so Horan tells them that they're the R Construction Brothers. A member of the committee mentions that they are on the blacklist but look alive and well, then another asks if they're the ones who asked to gather here. Horan tells them that it was actually Skull who called them to gather here, and it surprises the men because it's the first time that Skull has requested an audience with them. They wonder why, so Horan points a gun at them and tells them it's so they can clean up the garbage. Shocked, the head of operations asks Horan what he's doing, and another asks him if he's not scared of what Van Dale would do to him. However, Horan tells them he can't be scared of someone who's no longer with them, then says he's also doing this because Skull instructed them to. He immediately opens fire on the men. Meanwhile, in Skull's office, the man stutters, so Skull tells him it doesn't matter because he was planning to get rid of the committee soon anyway. He mentions that a lot of people out there must hate the committee members because they're the ones who created the blacklist, so he decides to focus on what kind of punishment to give this guy. The guy realizes he's cooked, so he dashes for the door, wondering how Skull found out because he was careful not to leak any info. Immediately, Skull jumps into the air and stomps him into the ground. He tells the guy that he wasn't going to eliminate him, but he's now pissed off because he tried to run away. At the prison, Panda checks on Hajin, and when Kim asks, she tells him that the boy just fainted and has no serious injuries. Moments later, Van stumbles up and tells Kim that the fight is not yet over. He insists that he hasn't lost yet and can't accept this result, then claims that this is just another hurdle for him to overcome as a hero. Van tells Proton to come help him, but Proton tells him he's as selfish as always. Van tells Proton to assist him to attack this guy like when they first arrived or target the little kid for leverage so as to enact justice. But Proton slashes him in half using his ice sword. Proton tells him he's never seen a loser run his mouth so much even after losing, and Van can't believe his eyes. Proton tells Van that the justice he keeps talking about is perverse, then greets him farewell as he falls. Because they weren't close, he tells Van that he doesn't wish him happiness in his next life. Kim is shocked, and so is Panda. Meanwhile, Razul runs after Lucy and wonders how she can run so fast on heels. Lucy despises him but hopes to get outside because she's certain she'll be able to escape there. Suddenly, someone corners her and asks if she's in a tight situation. It turns out to be Baekwai, which shocks Lucy. So she tells him she thought he abandoned his post. He tells her he's back, so she asks him to protect her because this assassin is after her, referring to Razul. Also, Razul is surprised to see Baekwai and wonders what the crazy bastard is doing all the way here. Suddenly, Baekwai asks Lucy why he should protect her, so she reminds him that he's a policeman and supposed to protect citizens. However, he reminds her she's a civil servant and technically his boss. Because of that, she orders him to obey her. But Baekwai tells her that he's solved countless cases and has trophies stacked up in his house. This confuses her, so he adds that he would have become a blue blood or head of the police department if he hadn't done something. He asks her if she knows what he did and how he messed up his life and dug his own grave. She tells him she doesn't know, so he releases an energy towards her that blasts her top half away, shocking Razul. Afterward, he states that the thing he did to shoot himself in the leg is his tendency to disobey his superiors because he can't seem to hold himself back. Meanwhile, Kim asks Proton what just happened, but Proton tells him it's clear that he just betrayed a blue blood. This annoys Proton, so he asks him if he thinks this puts him in the clear, but Panda suggests they hear him out first. She knows they should be careful of his cold and calculating nature, but it's good to hear what he has to say. Proton thanks her for giving him a chance, but he reminds her that he's only ever said things that are right when they were working together in the past. This annoys Panda, so she asks Kim if they should take his life. When they get to Proton's house, Kim finds Tanzi crying there because he's glad that he's safe. Tanzi explains that he was worried when he saw lava shooting out of the ground, but Rai accuses him of only being worried about himself. Tansai retorts that she spent all her time sleeping, but she tells him he'd be dead now if not for her ability. Suddenly, Kim thanks them, which surprises them. He explains that he'd be dead if they hadn't shown up, and thanks them for their help. This makes Tansy blush, but he tells Kim that he's always here for him. Suddenly, Detective Aston shows up and greets Kim. Surprised, Kim asks him if he works for Proton, so Aston explains that he doesn't. He explains that their goals just align a bit, just like the relationship he has with Kim. Kim asks him if Proton wants to rebuild the city like him, so Ashton tells him that Proton might be useful to his goals, even though he doesn't like some of his methods. Later, Panda and Kim meet with Proton, and he thanks them for their help. Kim asks him why he betrayed one of his own, so Proton asks him what he means by that. He bluntly explains that he hates them, and he's never even taken a single photo with them. He adds that he would have given up being a blue blood if it were possible. Apparently, the mayor placed him among them, and asked him to keep them in check because of their personalities. Kim tells Proton he shouldn't have lent his strength to them in the first place, so Proton explains that strengths and morals aren't always equal in a person. He adds that the mayor did what he thought was best. He explains that he knows the blue bloods crossed a line this time, especially since the mayor cares about the well-being of every child, even those from the streets. Suddenly, Panda mentions that she knows the mayor is a person shrouded in mystery, but she confesses that it was not the image she had of him. Regardless, Proton tells her that he's never personally met a man who's more pure in heart than the mayor. He knows that the mayor would come back to the city in an instant to fix things if he could. Intrigued, Kim asks where the mayor is, so Proton says the mayor is somewhere beyond the city in the streets. Apparently, it's because of him that the streets aren't completely destroyed for now. Because Proton knows what he does for them, he does whatever he requests of him, which includes blending in with the blue bloods. He explains that he had to do savage acts to blend in with the savages. But he eventually ran into a problem. Apparently one of the blue bloods found out about him and started to threaten his family. Because he hates them, he planned to eliminate them all instead of searching for who it was, but Kim showed up first and did the job. However, Kim points out that he was still an accomplice in kidnapping the children, so Proton tells him that he did what he had to do. He also adds that he did not thank him for defeating Van, but he thanked him for looking after his beloved granddaughter. To Kim's surprise, one of the girls named Mary appears. Mary greets teacher Kim and Panda, referring to her as Aunt Whites, her original name. Proton explains that this girl is his granddaughter, Reca, and she stayed at their school. Kim is confused, so Mary apologizes and says she's deeply sorry. Kim asks her what's going on, so Panda brings it up that she had a feeling about this when she noticed that one of the girls from his drawings resembled Reca. She also figures that since Kim lived in the slums and in a forest in the middle of nowhere, it's most likely that no one would go there with the intention to kidnap children. She considers that it was more likely that they tracked the specific location to retrieve Reca. Suddenly, Kim recalls how Reca used to be much more polite and well-mannered than the other children and figures that it's connected to this. Panda asks Proton why the girl was at Kim's school at first, so Proton explains that his son, Reneza's father, had passed away in a car accident. However, he explains that he didn't believe it was a random accident, so he sent the girl away to a safe location. Apparently, he heard a rumor of a school hidden in the slums, so he took her there himself. He adds that the principal seemed like a good person, and he's pained by the news of his death. He states that he was able to hide Reneza's location perfectly, so the fact that they were able to detect her location shows him that the culprit is W, because only her superpower can do that. Because Reca felt guilty that everything happened because of her, she had asked Proton to save the other children, but he had to decline because the other blue bloods were too strong for him to handle. Proton tells Kim he can call him a coward since it's his fault that the principal died and the other children are in danger, so he offers to take any punishment Kim would wish to give. However, Kim just walks past him toward Reca and he remembers everything that has happened to them. Suddenly Reca starts to cry, and she apologizes to the teacher because these things wouldn't have happened if she weren't at the school. However, Kim cleans her tears and tells her he didn't know she had so much going on in her life. He tells her he knows she must have been so scared, and he wishes he could have done more for her. He hugs her and apologizes to her instead. Later that night, W enters a cathedral and confesses that she's surprised that Van Deal was defeated. She admits that she had a feeling Proton would betray them, and he won't hold back now, especially since the others are out of the picture. Regardless, she assures the man standing nearby that everything will work out. She says she has seen the future, and with the thing they have, the world will be reborn. In front of them, Taishan is trapped in a blue crystal ball. Sometime later, Hajin asks the old man if he can get a haircut, but the man decides to keep it long. Suddenly, Kim enters with Reca, and the other kids are glad to see her. Hajin climbs Kim and tells him he's bigger than the principal now, and when they jump on him, he wonders how they're not surprised by his appearance. Hajin explains that Auntie Panda has already explained things to them, and Panda is surprised he called her Auntie. Meanwhile, the old man realizes that Kim is not who he thought. Nearby, Ray tries to get Panda to snap out of it when she collapses after Hajin calls her aunt. Sometime later, Rai thinks about how they've seen great changes in the city after they got to this place. A video of the Crimson Prison explosion was released, and people who were imprisoned wrongly escaped and decided to spread the truth to the citizens. Rai also remembers that Detective Aston had said it's almost time and left to go to the broadcasting station, but she doesn't know what he meant by that. A Apart from that, those holding Maru finally returned him, and Rai believes Zipper must have handled that. Also, the company Titan Hand was apparently split into two, each half given to one of Van Deel's subordinates. Rai and Ramo eventually decided to return to their hometown, especially since Handsome asked them to come back. As they're about to leave, Razul enters the house battered, and he asks them why none of them looked for him since they're his friends. The girls are first surprised, so Ramo excitedly asks him if he came back, and Rai tells him that they thought he ran away when he got the chance. Annoyed, Razul asks them if they know how much he suffered for them. Then he points back at the other kids he rescued for them, who are wearing Labsid uniforms. Surprised, Kim recognizes the kids are Sung-hoon and Baekseon, so he rushes to greet them, but they wonder who on earth he is. Razul explains that Baekwa suddenly showed up and took down Lucy when he was following her. Then he asked him to follow him to Lab City. Panda recalls that Lab City is Nogle's lab, so she wonders if Baekwa rescued the kids from the slums. She asks him about Nogle, so Razul says that he ran away. Suddenly, Baekwa calls out to Kim and tells him it's time for him to repay him, and asks for a chance to slap him this once. Suddenly, Kim remembers how Aston tells him he hopes he found his family, and he needs to be careful of his head, so he blocks Baekwa's hand. This annoys Baekwa, so he turns away and tells Kim that they're not even. Kim is confused, so Panda asks him if he knows Baekwa. Still confused, Kim says he only remembers beating him up. Suddenly, Tansai enters and is shocked to find out that Baekwa is alive. As he approaches him, Baekwa grabs his head and playfully tells him he's rude. He asks him why he's with the red mask bastard, and Tansai tries to explain, but it's too late. In a flashback, Baekwa digs himself out of the grave and wonders who on earth the guy he fought with was. He realizes he's in a cemetery and thinks about how pathetic it was for him to be knocked out. Even though he let his guard down, his stomach starts to rumble, so he decides to get some food first. A few days after, he's still hungry, and he starts to be in serious pain because he's unable to get food in the slums. When he runs into a guy having a piece of food, he stares at the guy, but the guy quickly eats the food because he's going through a lot since the city's not supporting them anymore. Annoyed, Baekwa calls the guy a stubborn and weak slum bastard, but he refuses to steal his food because he has the pride of a cop. A couple of days after, Baekwa crumbles on the streets, and he wonders if he's going to die of hunger after all his exploits. Considering how he's going to die, he wonders if he should have fought Van Deel to see who's stronger. Suddenly, Soyeon finds him, so he asks her if she has some food. His shout startles her, so she starts to run. He tries to ask her to wait, but she soon trips and falls. When she starts to cry, Baekwa realizes he's wasted the little energy he has. Sometime later, she returns with some food while still crying and drops it in front of him. After he eats the food, Baekwa learns about the school and asks Soyeon about her family. To show him, she draws him a picture of Kim and the others, but Baekwa becomes angry about the red mask bastard and promises to take his life when he meets him. When Soyeon hears that, she starts to cry. So Baekwa asks her if she always cries. He insists that crying doesn't work on him, and she can cry all she wants, but she goes on for 2 hours until he starts to wonder how a single human can have so many tears. When he's eventually worn out, he promises not to fight Kim and pleads with her to stop. Shortly after, she falls asleep and he wonders what's wrong with her. Eventually, she wakes up and explains everything to him, and Baekwa realizes he's listening to the motives of the guy who kicked his behind. Later, Baekwa takes the principal's clothes and checks out his burial spot. He tells Soyeon that he's keeping the clothes but promises to repay her for the food and clothes. When he leaves, she sees him off, and Baekwa realizes that he had only thought trashy people lived in the streets. He soon accepts that people are really the same everywhere you go. In another flashback, a strange being sits in his office when he notices someone who he's amused to see that he's still alive. The being sees the principal and confesses that he can't believe that an outsider could walk in here at their own will. He adds that people with superpowers are usually banned from this place. However, the principal tells him to cut the shit because he knows he wanted to see him. The being tells the principal that he's not interested in him but in the thing that he has. The principal tells him to speak directly, so the being asks him if he came to him to make a deal. Meanwhile, in Blue Moon City, people protest against corrupt companies and demand an upright city. In the news, it's reported that a huge fight occurred that day between opposing groups and the Titan Hand. The reporters talk about how the citizens don't know what's going on behind the shadows. Later, Aston shows up on TV and gives a speech about how they must work to rebuild a better city. He tells them that it may take time to do, but it's necessary for them. From this time, he tells the public that they'll start closing in on corporate criminals within the city. To start with, he mentions that they'll start by interrogating every citizen, which surprises the reporters. Aston tells them that all police forces must now follow his jurisdiction, and the senior police officer Aston encountered earlier is surprised to learn that the first people to be investigated will be the police forces. The officer reads a text message that was sent to the police force to show the suspects for investigation, and the senior officer's face is first Shocked, the officer publicly asks Aston if he's also not a member of the police force, and tells him he has no right to order a mass investigation on every citizen of the city. The officer is quickly subdued by Tanzai, and the man asks Tansai what on earth he's doing. Tansai tells him he's arresting him according to the text, so Ashton clarifies that he does have the right to do this because the mayor himself ordered the investigation. Apparently Ashton is the mayor's executive squad. Somewhere else another officer sees the list of suspects and notices the picture of one of his juniors there. The man looks across the room with suspicion, so the junior starts to sweat bullets and asks his senior if he would really turn in his beloved junior just because of a mere text. Immediately the senior whips out a rod, calls him a criminal piece of shit, and tells him he never liked him. Meanwhile, some other police officers beat up their mates whose names turned up on the list. Nearby, Baekwa is excited that they're able to beat up these guys lawfully. Somewhere else, Prodon explains to Kim and the others that the police officers are currently busy, so he stages a plan to infiltrate W's weird cult group. When Kim asks about Razul, Panda tells him that he's with Ramo and Rai. Prodon tells them that the cult's name is New Galaxy, but most of the members are average people who don't have special abilities to stop them. The only problem they'd run into is W's ability to see the future, so Prodon tells them she most likely knows they're coming. Regardless, Kim punches the gate wide open because he doesn't care that she can see the future. When they enter, Kim is surprised to see several people bowed to the ground outside. When they enter what looks like a cathedral, Prodon spots Nogel and asks him if this is where he ran to. However, Nogel laughs and explains he wouldn't ditch their beloved city by going far away. Suddenly W welcomes them and tells them she was waiting for them. She asks if they're here for the child, so Kim asks her where Taishan is. She tells him that Taishan has become an honorable sacrifice, but assures him that the kid isn't dead. She explains that people think her superpower is seeing the future, but that's just a part of it. Apparently, her full ability allows her to take people and transform them into holy objects. With the ability, she can make objects like the one she's holding, which can grant users omnipotent power. Prodon asks her what she plans to do with such a dangerous object. So she tells him that she plans to use it to amplify her power. After that, she plans to seal every single person into objects like this, so they can live happily forever like Taishan. She tells Prodon that there are dangerous monsters beyond the streets, and only 2 people, which include the mayor and someone called Twindrop, are fighting to protect their city from these monsters. Even though the mayor is strong, she mentions that Twindrop might reach his limit soon, and the city will be in danger if one of them gets defeated. It annoys Kim to hear that she plans to seal everyone in these objects, so she explains that it's her way of keeping them safe. She adds that the world needs more than a mayor, but a god. She throws the object in the air and invites them to the birth of a new world. Suddenly W is shot in the head and she falls to the ground. The others are shocked, but Nogel, who had shot her, tells the others that W talks too much. He adds that even with her ability to see the future, she can only detect the final result, and not the process. So, she didn't know the exact way she'd die, but she had only assumed that Nogel was on her side because the others were his enemies. Nogel picks up the divine object and explains that he'll be the one using it. Kim becomes angry, and he remembers how Prodon had said he sent Reneza to a safe place after he suspected that his son's accident wasn't random. He remembers how the mayor committed Prodon to keep the others in check, and how Nogel sent the others to Lucy's place to fight against Kim. He remembers Nogel's Black series, his human experiments, Lucy, Barry, and how he met Nogel at first. So he realizes that everything that has happened so far has been part of his plan. Nogel places the object on his head, and his body transforms into that of a normal man. So he jokingly asks Kim if he was able to figure that out now. Prodon confesses that everything, including the kidnapping of Prodon's granddaughter, was just so he could obtain this object. Apparently he made use of someone who was an expert at kidnapping children, and it was easy for him to do that because he was a part of the Blue Bloods. He also adds that he could have also made Og's medications easily without Hyunjong, but he did it because of his plan. He starts to laugh maniacally and eventually admits that Kim's appearing wasn't part of his plan, but he believes it doesn't matter. Nogel creates an energy spear in his hand and talks about how W used her abilities to create a cult. While he's talking, Prodon jumps towards him with his spear, and Nogel notes that Prodon never wastes time. Meanwhile, Prodon plans to eliminate Nogel before he becomes accustomed to his power. He slashes Nogel, but he's surprised when he simply passes through him. He quickly turns to attack him again, but Nogel blocks the attack with just a simple wave of his hand. Seeing that he blocked it, Prodon freezes him in a mound of ice, but Nogel playfully asks him if this is all. This annoys Prodon, so he moves in to finish Nogel off, but Nogel elevates the rock under his feet and crushes Prodon under it. This shocks Panda, and Nogel asks Prodon how it feels seeing his glorious self fail. He lifts Prodon in the air and starts to violently smash him into the ground while he laughs in excitement. Immediately, the others launch into action to attack Noggle, but Noggle fades away before they can hit him. He soon appears in the air and tells Noggle that he's a blue blood who goes around getting their behinds whooped by people from the streets and accuses him of treachery. When Kim asks him what he plans to do with his power, Noggle tells him that he hates the mayor. Apparently, one of Noggle's experiments once attacked him and ripped out his eyes, nose, and mouth. When the mayor got to the place, he told Noggle that he's disappointed in him, and reminds him that he never approved of inhumane experiments like this. He tells Noggle not to heal his injuries, as an act of reflection and punishment, and threatens to punish him directly if he does. After that, the mayor relieved him of his position of becoming a blue blood. Noggle insists that his experiment was to help the city, and he wonders why the mayor could say that to him. Kim asks him if he's doing all this because he doesn't like the mayor, and Noggle eventually says he was kidding. He confesses that he really just wants to stand at the height of the human race, which shocks them. Apparently, he had tried once a long time ago, but a man in red showed up and foiled his plan. However, since he now has omnipotent power, Noggle believes it's different. Eventually, he decides to finish them off and sends an energy blast at them to take them out. Immediately, Panda jumps towards the energy sphere to block it. She uses her matter solidification ability to kick it, but the sphere eats up her shoe and she realizes her ability isn't working on it. So she doesn't get disintegrated. Kim rushes to pull her away and he throws her out of the way. He lets the sphere disintegrate part of his body, so Noggle appears to commend his hard work. Annoyed, Kim tries to punch him, but soon realizes there's a glass wall between them. Regardless, his punch breaks through the wall, but a portal opens up and he ends up punching himself. Noggle notes that it's odd that Kim was able to break through the wall even though Noggle couldn't. This shocks Noggle, so he admits that our guy is the biggest obstacle in the way of his plan, then decides that he has to be fully eliminated. When the scar from the energy sphere starts to eat up Kim's body, Kim wonders what's going on and screams in horror when his entire body is almost eaten up. Moments later, Kim is completely consumed and Panda screams in horror. Suddenly, Noggle freezes her in place, and he starts to comprehend the power that his object gives him. The power it gives him is the ability to control the environment around in any way that he wants, and he figures that he may be able to control even time if he uses it well. He guesses that makes him a god. So he laughs maniacally and leaves Panda frozen on the ground. Meanwhile, in the area beyond the streets, Twindrop, the city's vice mayor, tells the mayor that the recent attacks have become fiercer. He tells the mayor that they received a message from the city requesting for help, and he asks if they should head back. But the mayor doesn't agree. He asks Twindrop if he thinks there's someone or something more dangerous than the monsters there. He confesses that he has an idea about what's going on, but says that a decent friend has entered the scene recently. Twindrop asks if he's referring to the person eliminating the Blue Bloods, and wonders why the mayor considers him a friend since he's never seen him. The mayor tells him that he actually has, even before Twindrop was born. Twindrop looks at him in confusion, but the mayor tells him to get ready because the monsters are coming back up. Meanwhile, Noggle broadcasts a message to all citizens to inform them that he's the new mayor. To bring order to the city, he promises to introduce a better system and asks that they follow him. Surprised, the citizens demand to know who gave him the authority to become the mayor, so Noggle laughs that they don't really have the luxury of getting a choice at the moment. He decides to show his authority to those who are stupid among them, so he sends energy spheres raining upon them. He tells them that they're getting punished because they feel as if each of them is special, but don't realize that they're just repetitive components of a society. The city is soon on fire and Noggle tells them to know their place. Shortly after, the police form charge into action and they start to pour bullets on Noggle to stop him. Meanwhile, Tansai crawls somewhere after being seriously wounded. Noggle soon approaches him and recognizes that he's one of the people who worked with Kim. He asks Tansai if he will still resist him, then offers that he can come work for him as long as he betrays his comrades, just like the sneaky rat he is. Noggle promises him a better life, but he's soon shot, even though he uses another energy field to stop the bullet. Tansai, who is the shooter, tells him he knows he's usually a coward, but explains that he's waiting for this moment. He insists that he's a police officer who will protect the citizens, so Noggle asks what the fuss is about since he had promised to make a better city. Noggle explains that he doesn't understand why everyone is resisting his authority, and he sends an energy sphere at Tansai. As Tansai is about to be consumed, the sphere is broken by Baekwa, who blasts it with his superpower. Tansai is glad to see his superior, but Baekwa calls Noggle a shriveled-up lab rat. Amused, Noggle tells Baekwa that he was wondering where he went to, but Nazpul soon ambushes Noggle from behind. Noggle spots him and traps Nazpul in an energy cube. Regardless, Nazpul teleports out of the cube and punches Noggle in the face. Excited, Nazpul tells him that he has experienced fighting criminals who have superpowers, and that amuses Noggle. He realizes that Baekwa and Nazpul have superpowers that deal with space and area, and they're able to counter his ability because theirs overlaps with his. After defeating them, he thanks them for helping him learn more about his ability. As he leaves, Nogul explains that even the strongest policeman, Baekwai, can't defeat him. Then he turns to Tansei so they can continue where they left off. Suddenly, Kim appears and Nogul tells him it's a disappointment. He asks Kim why he's protecting the people of the city since he hated them before. But Kim tells Nogul he seems to be mistaken. Tansei is relieved to see Kim, and Nogul admits that he's surprised that our boy was able to come here after he just disintegrated him. Regardless, he tells Kim he's still a loser, then binds him up because he has no time to play with him. Tansei realizes that Nogul's power allows him to stop people in the space around him, and he realizes this is unfair because Kim doesn't have an ability that overlaps with that. While he's thinking, Kim suddenly breaks the bind and tells Nogul that he'll defeat him somehow and doesn't care how he'll do it. Nogul realizes that Kim doesn't have an ability that has to do with area or space, so he wonders how he was able to break through. Eventually, Nogul decides to change the playing field and moves them to another plane. They disappear from Tansei's sight but appear from the ground, and Kim is shocked when he realizes that they're in the space between their world and its reflection. Nogul tells him they don't have to cause any damage to their beloved city here and he can easily deal with him here. Kim says it's too bad that the real world isn't affected by what happens here because he wanted them to see Nogul's behind being whooped. Nogul finds that crude, but Kim rushes at him with great speed and Nogul points downward. As Kim is about to punch him, a huge rock controlled by Nogul slams into Kim. Many other rocks smashed into the ground, smashing to bits the place that Kim was standing on. After the destruction, Nogul is pleased with his thorough actions because he's certain that he's killed Kim at least 10,000 times. However, Kim rushes out again and Nogul becomes irritated by how he always resurrects from such things when he believes it's over. Nogul feels like Kim is not just regenerating fast, but it's like he's forcing time to reset every time. Suddenly, he disappears to the real realm before Kim can punch him again, and he thinks deeply about the concept of time. He recalls that there are rare people in every era who can meddle with concepts. For example, there are those who can control fire, and there are those who can create fire. The difference is that the one who can create has power over the concept of fire, because they can create any type of fire that they please. Nogul wonders whether Kim's superpower isn't healing, but that his body is resetting to the time before he got injured. Suddenly, Nogul appears back in the other plane and tells Kim that he understands his superpower now. He explains that time is connected with space because there must be space for time to pass, and time must pass if there is space. He apologizes to Kim because he had thought he had a crude and brutish superpower, but he now realizes that Kim has the power to control time. He immediately rains several attacks on Kim to tear him into pieces because there's so much he wants to observe about him. He wonders if there is a connection between time and destructive strength, and if Kim can time travel. He decides that he'll make Kim his lab rat and traps his parts in an energy cube. He traps Kim in multiple layers of time and space, but Kim soon punches him from the side and breaks his upper half into several parts. He warns Nogul not to make him dizzy, but Nogul starts to rearrange his parts and asks Kim if he instantly rewound time to his previous location. He finds his power amazing, but he eventually leaves because he's bored, which confuses Kim. Nogul mentions that Kim is unable to die, so it would be a waste of time for him to keep trying. He plans to imprison him here forever, then come to study him once in a while. Kim rushes at him to punch him, but Nogul soon disappears. When Kim realizes he's been left alone, he warns Nogul to cut the shit and return, but he gets no response. Suddenly, he hears someone asking if the teacher is okay, and realizes it's Yura's voice. He hears the kids talk about how the city is in shambles, but Hojin points out that the teacher should be giving the villain a backside whooping now. Suddenly, Nogul appears where they are to show them that he's not the one in trouble, but it's their teacher who will be. Nogul says that he's thought about it and has decided that Kim's worst nightmare would be the death of his children. He fantasizes about cutting off their heads and throwing them into the place he's trapped in, and hopes that Kim would cry when that happens. Nogul starts to laugh maniacally while Kim burns with anger and tells him to stop. Nogul doesn't listen and extends his energy sphere, while Hojin jumps forward to try to protect the others. Kim demands that he stops and punches into the vision being displayed to him and shatters it. Suddenly, the being that the principal met before tells Kim to stop because punching down the image won't change anything. Kim appears on a seat filled with rage, so he asks the being who on earth he is, and states he doesn't have time for small talk. However, the being tells him there's no need to worry because time has stopped, and the clown pretending to be God isn't immune to that. Kim asks the being if he's a god, but the being tells him that he's currently a devil and he's never seen a god. He adds that he does sometime wonder if he's God, but confesses that he's the devil of chance and contracts, and this is his office. Apparently he gives superpowers to those who need help, and he explains that every single person with a superpower that he knows has once visited him here. Kim mentions that no one has ever mentioned this place to him, so the devil tells him that there's no need to because they all assumed he came here to get his power just like they did. However, the devil tells him that he's using the mask's superpower and he doesn't have one. Kim asks him what he wants with him, so the devil mentions that he felt he might want some help. He adds that a businessman knows to sell stuff at the highest price to a person when they need it the most. He offers to make a deal with Kim since his attempts to escape the place that he's in isn't working and his kids are in danger. He offers to improve the superpower the mask gives him. So Kim asks him what he wants in return. The devil asks that he hand over the mask once the fight is over, because the mask is not supposed to be used. Apparently he had made the mask by accident and says its creation is a defect. He tells Kim that him using the mask affects the balance that should be maintained in the world. Kim proposes the deal and says he can even go ahead to take his soul as long as he helps to save his children. This makes the devil laugh and he tells him he doesn't need his soul, and he finalizes the contract. He tells Kim that he's now an arrow of time. When time resumes, Nogel continues laughing as he's about to destroy the children, but a red line suddenly appears in front of him. He wonders what it means until the red line destroys his sphere and breaks the wall between both realities to allow Kim to enter there. Kim's claw-like hand comes out, which shocks Nogel, so Kim tells him that time passes through space, and there is nothing that can stop the flow of time. Suddenly, the red line falls upon Nogel's body, and he wonders why it's passing through him. Immediately, Kim growls at him and pulls him into the plane where he is. The kids look into the plane, wondering what is going on, but time suddenly starts to reverse both in the real world and in the other plane. Time reverts to just before Nogel abandoned Kim in the plane, and Nogel realizes that he has sent them back in time. He wonders how he did that, but Kim, now looking like a red devil, just smiles. Kim tells him that he didn't care when he eliminated the other blue bloods, but says that he would enjoy eliminating him. Kim releases streaks of red lightning at him, but Nogel screams at the boy, saying he's nothing. Neither a mayor nor a citizen. He tells Kim that he's not even a notable person from the streets and insists that nobody's like him can't defeat him. Nogel fills up with rage, while Kim also burns with fury, and their unleashed powers collide in the middle. When the smoke from the collision clears, Nogel is left without arms, and his body is cracked into separate parts by Kim's red lines. The red devil soon approaches him and takes out the object from his head, making Nogel scream in horror. As Kim removes it, they teleport between several realms until they end up in space, yet he still manages to take it away. After separating Nogel from the object, Kim releases him into space to fall to his doom and tells Taishin, who's inside the object, that it's time for them to go home. Kim suddenly starts to fall and begins to panic when he realizes he can't use his time powers and can't return. He suddenly realizes that the devil has taken back the mask, just as stated in the contract, and he laughs at how successful the deal turned out to be. With the mask in hand, the devil remarks that this is what it feels like to make a deal with the devil. He asks Kim if he has no regret since he has achieved what he wanted. Meanwhile, Kim falls toward his death, but tells himself that it doesn't matter as long as they can go home. His body soon ignites from the speed of re-entry into the atmosphere, and many people below look up at the sky, seeing a red line streaking toward the ground. Kim finally crashes into the earth and his impact creates a massive crater. Inside the crater, Taishin appears nude. 3 years later, the Blue Moon City regains its former vibrance. On a talk show, a man says that the ideology of their new city is to give everyone equal opportunities without discrimination. He argues with another man about the fairness of granting a company named Ice Chamber a monopoly over a company called the Pipelines, but Chamin argues that they're simply doing business, so it's not a monopoly. The man accuses Chamin of being an Ice Chamber underling, and they start a fierce argument while Horan listens with a smile on his face. Eventually, Hurin tries to calm them down because they're on live TV, but they warn him to stay out of it, even though he's the host of the panel. Meanwhile, Reneza watches their argument with amusement. But Proton tells her that he can't just hand over the pipelines to anyone. He worries that it could become the second coming of the Blue Bloods if he gives it to the wrong person, especially since humans tend to be greedy. He advises Reneza to learn to always maintain self-control. In the wasteland beyond the streets, Ramo laments that a man is charging her 11,000 yules for a liter of gas. She accuses him of inflating the price, but he tells her it's obvious she's an outsider because of her outfit. He asks how she would know the actual price, but Razul soon warns the man not to lie to his friend, or he might end up becoming her slave if he does. Razul grabs the man's arm and notices that he has a mechanical prosthetic arm. Meanwhile, on Fashion Street, a biker gang rides furiously with the intention of taking over the area. They decide to attack anyone who stands against them and stab a guy they see on the road. Nearby, the original version of the guy screams because they stabbed his clone. Rai, who is standing beside him, tells the guy that he's lost again and she's never seen him win. The guy asks her if he should call for backup, but she tells him there's no need because she can handle it herself. After using her superpower on a nearby tire and turning it against the men, they're easily defeated, so she ties them up in the middle of the street. When Tansi arrives, he tells Rai that it looks like the men walked right into her hands. He calls her a lucky gatekeeper, but she punches him and reminds him she's not a gatekeeper. Eventually, she asks him if he has time later tonight, so Tansai asks if she believes there'll be more criminals coming at night. Rai begins to blush and tells him that she asked because there's a restaurant that just opened nearby. He bluntly asks if she wants to grab dinner with him and starts talking about night duty, so she punches him in the face. When he stumbles, she threatens him to come along with her to eat, and Tansai reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, the criminals worry about how they lost to a random farmer in the slums and now to a single girl. They don't realize that the random farmer is actually Bakwai. At the Fashion Street School, Taishin enters the classroom excited that he's first, but then realizes others have already arrived. One of the girls teases Taishin for being late because he had to retake a class. So Hajin suggests that Taishin study more. However, Taishin insists that he wants to become a track athlete, so he doesn't need to. But Yura points out that his career choice doesn't even exist in Fashion Street. Suddenly, Soyeon asks the others what day it is and wonders why they're the only ones called to class that day. Maru mentions that he heard it's a supplementary class, but Haeok notes that they're all from different classes. When Taishin laments having to retake a supplementary class too, Panda enters and starts chasing them all around to tickle them. Eventually, when Panda gets to the front of the class, the students wonder why she's teaching a supplementary class since she's a high school teacher. However, she explains that she's only there to introduce a new teacher. Hajin hopes it's a female teacher, but Panda asks why he's never this excited about her. She worries that it's because he thinks she's old, but then announces that the new teacher is male. Immediately, Hajin says they don't need him, but Yura tells him to stop being rude. Suddenly, Panda tells Kim that Hajin says he can leave because they don't need him. The other students are shocked to hear that name and rush to meet Kim. In a flashback, the principal goes to the devil to make a deal, offering to give up his superpower. The devil asks if he realizes that he'll just become a normal old man who could easily die from a single bullet. But the principal pats his head and asks if he remembers when they first met. Surprised, the devil admits that he remembers hearing the principal's wish to protect his family, which is why he granted him the superpower. However, he points out that he didn't know the principal would cause such a mess with the mask. The principal explains that the power was never meant for him. He says that he now has a new family to protect but is too old to do it properly. The devil isn't moved by his emotional reason, but he asks what the principal wants in return for giving up his superpower. The principal says he wants the devil to give his family a chance if he ever leaves this world and they're in danger. In the present, Kim reunites with the kids, and the devil realizes that the principal's contract terms are far too ambiguous. He wonders if this outcome satisfies him and calls him the Red, the original Redman.